This is a true crime discussions channel. We speculate. This is all just speculation. Because it's true crime, it's for mature audiences only. There will be no children allowed, no exceptions. Everything on this channel falls under fair use. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share. It's free. Good morning. I'm sorry my video stopped. I was trying to see if the people were testifying in the Leilani Simon trial, and like every time I click on something else, it'll stop my video, and then I have to go all the way back to the beginning to replay it. So that's why the missing children video was cut short this morning. I apologize about that. It's from October 12th, so I will be making an updated one today. I do have new clips. One of them is for new members. So if we get any new members, I will show you that one. And here is the other one. This one is for Jenny Jen. I have to fix the end part. It always puts that on my videos. Happy birthday, Jenny. Yay, Jenny. Happy birthday. Okay. So, good morning, Joy. Jenny says that in the Leilani Simon trial, the dealers are going to be testifying. So, if that was going on. Oh, I knew I was. Look, I said I'm going to do this, and it's going to be the wrong date. I'm sorry, Jenny. I thought you said it was the 22nd. Look at me. I said I'm going to do this, and it's going to be the wrong damn day. I feel real stupid right now. Well, forgive me. It's early. We'll do it again on the 26th, and I can fix the video. Let's see. It looks like the only one that's live right now is the Sarah Boone trial. I don't think Leilani is live yet. My mind's all over the place this morning. Yeah, it's not on yet. Okay, so that means let's look into, first of all, Richard Allen, because I really want to know if there's any updates. Let me get this where y'all can see it. Where y'all can see it. Somebody said the 22nd. I wonder if it's somebody else. My mama's is the 24th. All right, so we'll play this one real quick, and then we will do the 7 shocking details released. I don't know. Maybe we'll do the hidden true crime and see what she had to say about it. Let's start with this one.
Amazon fall favorites are here.
Get your fall favorites from Amazon, y'all. All righty. So let's see what they said about it.
Head to Delphi, Indiana in the murder trial against Richard.
This is Court TV.
Allen. It's day 3 of this trial. No cameras are allowed in the courtroom.
But our senior producer, Barbara McDonald, is there inside, and she joins us now from the phone. Barbara, let us know what you can about what happened today during the morning session.
So we heard from 2 witnesses today. The first was the first law enforcement officer who arrived at the crime scene after that volunteer searcher reported finding the bodies. And this was Carroll County Deputy Darren Giancola.
I wanted to stop real quick and just say thank you guys for spending your Tuesday morning with me. I know you guys could be anywhere else, but you're here with me, and that means a lot to me. Thank you so much for being here.
And he described parking at the cemetery that was just north of the crime scene and walking straight south down from that cemetery to the creek. And he said he got to the creek where he encountered several people who were the people who had reported finding the bodies of Abby and Libby alongside that creek. And he said that on his walk down, he did not notice the bodies. But once he encountered those people and he saw the clothing in the creek, he described a multicolored T-shirt and a black and white Nike shoe that he saw.
This is going to be the police officer talking about what he found when he was first on the scene. Sorry about that banging. They're working on stuff out there. Good morning, LA. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, and with y'all's being the 26th, I can hopefully make you a better video. That was just something real quick because I thought it was today. I feel stupid. I'm sorry. But we'll have y'all something better by the 26th. Happy early birthday.
In the creek. He said the searchers told him that behind him was where the bodies were. And then he got closer to that area. He said that you couldn't really see them from the creek, but as he got closer, he could. He described that Libby was found nude. Abby was clothed. He said he saw a significant amount of blood on their bodies and on the ground. And he was asked if he attempted any life-saving measures. And he said he did not because it was obvious that they were deceased. Now, the second witness, which is number 9 for the state, was Indiana State Police crime scene investigator Jason Page. And he got to the scene around 2 o'clock, he said. So the bodies were first found by that searcher at noon. Law enforcement began arriving about 12:15, and this gentleman arrived around 2 o'clock. He went through 44 images that were entered into evidence, and the first 3 were depictions that he made showing the topography of the area as well as the placement of the bodies. The rest were all photographs that he took of not only the scene, the creek, where the crime scene barrier tape was placed, but also close-ups showing how these girls were found on that February day back in 2017. There were some, I guess, privacy blockers placed over Libby's body because she was nude. So they had these black rectangles covering parts of her body for modesty, I assume. You did see a significant amount of blood on her. They also showed an area just south of where the girls' bodies were, where there was a large pool of blood. And then the tree where Libby was found was not the tree that had the blood patterns on it. That was a couple of feet away, and there was a smaller circle of blood on the ground near that tree. And this officer described 2 areas on the tree that had blood. And he knew that they had swabbed them. He photographed those areas.
This is really graphic. I'm sorry, y'all. I know this is hard to listen to. This is, again, the update from yesterday at court, or what they're talking about has happened so far in the Delphi murder cases.
And they showed them to us. They did not look like blood, though, because of the material he used for testing. The blood actually looked blue in the images that we were seeing today. We're back in session at 1 o'clock, and we assume we're going to be on cross-examination with this
you got at
witness.
least that many more to go.
All right, Barbara McDonald, I'll let you get back into the courtroom.
Cozy.
Barbara will be with us throughout the day here on Court TV with the
morning.
details. And boy, it's just got to be horrible for these jurors, but the family members to see those images. It's just
so much blood. I mean, that's been part of this case where someone saw a man they said resembled.
Good morning. We just started just now. I've just played this video updating us on the Richard Allen case. I got a lot of updates this morning for us.
Richard Allen covered in blood like he had been slaughtering an animal. And when you hear about how much blood was involved, it's just chilling to think about what happened in those woods.
It's just what these 2 little girls went through is just, it's hard to get your head around.
How much blood was involved. It's just chilling to think about what happened in those woods.
It's just what these 2 little
Did they say Richard Allen had blood on him?
Just got to be horrible for these jurors, but the family members to see those images. It's just
so much blood. I mean, that's been part of this case where someone saw a man they said resembled Richard Allen covered in blood like he had been slaughtering an animal. And when you hear about how much blood was involved, it's just chilling to think about what happened in those woods.
It's just what these.
They said blood or mud, from what I understand. Cozy asked, why are they saying it wasn't Richard Allen? Because there's a lot of questions on whether it was actually him or not. And at the end of the day, the jury's going to be the ultimate deciding factor, but there's a lot in this case that could make you at least question whether they have the right person or not. I wish I was turning 28, Jenny. Yeah, Cozy, they say he confessed a bunch of times, but like it was under mental distress. They found the girls were holding a piece of hair, but they found out it belonged to a woman. But what was a woman doing at the scene of the crime for that baby to have grabbed her hair? Number 2. Number 3, these sketches being different. There's a lot going on with it.
These two little girls went through is just, it's hard to get your head around. Jessica Ehrlich is with us. In this case, Jessica, there's this sort of secrecy that's been imposed by this Judge Gall, who's up and I guess there's fear. Different judges have different fears about cameras and access. Some of it is because they don't want to have to be judged themselves. Some is because they're thinking from a legal standpoint it's better for. But what it's created is this. There's an undercurrent. There's some people think Richard Allen's innocent and this is a bunch of odious gang members and blah blah blah. It is a shame that we don't get to watch this trial because and I think at the back end it's a shame for the state and for those investigators, because concealing stuff just feels like you're hiding something for a reason, and this is one of those cases. But a day like today.
Yep. And everybody, it doesn't matter the legitimacy of this case now, or if he's found guilty or innocent. Half of the people that feel that if he's convicted, the people that feel that he's innocent is going to feel like he didn't get a good trial, a proper trial. I don't understand why they wouldn't have just done it, made it public. They could have done like where they're doing with Leilani Simon. We can't see the jurors. We don't know who they are, you know. That way, the legitimacy of the trial wouldn't have been questioned. And them not letting them enter, I don't know if they decided to not let them use the sketches or whatever, like you should let them use all the evidence so the jurors can make a decision based on all of the evidence so that nobody can question the legitimacy of the trial and if they have the right person, in my opinion.
Boy, where Barbara describing that just gives you chills. That's
right,
where.
Thank you, Jenny.
I just think that this is one of the.
So Jenny says, I think Richard Allen confessed to unaliving his own family, but he didn't have kids. He does have kids. Thank you for bringing that up. Yes, Cozy. He confessed to murdering his or unaliving his entire family and his grandchildren, and he doesn't even have grandchildren. So they're saying, and I question, like, okay, well then is he guilty, and is he trying to prove that he's like go with the insanity plea by doing things like that, or was it the conditions at the jail and where he was being kept that made him, or is really making him unhinged? There's a lot of questions. I just wish that they would let all the evidence be entered so that they had everything and could make an informed decision that way. You know what I mean?
One of those cases where letting the light in wouldn't hurt anybody, including Richard Allen and more importantly, maybe the state of Indiana.
I mean, it's also, I think the other side is that we are talking about a heinous crime that affected 2 young girls and their families. And that the concern, especially when you have juveniles, as you know, it's better, even in any sense, when you're in court, you don't refer to them by name, you redact information on them. I mean, you know, my concern also is, given the amount of celebrity, if you will, around this man, that he wouldn't have copycats who try to go out and do similar things to what he's done. We see that very often. And I don't know that the full facts being, revealed in this situation. I think the state has a very strong case, and it will be what it is. But there are a lot of evildoers out there, and they take things like this as a signal to be more creative or to come up with different ways to handle things. So I don't know. I mean, I think it goes sort of both ways. It's always good to have sunshine in the law, but in a situation like this, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, every state is different and every judge is different. Now, this jury, something that's different about them, they're sequestered, so they have trial on Saturday to try and...
Thank you again, all my lovely speculating family members, for being here and spending your Tuesday with us. Y'all could be anywhere in the whole entire world, but you're here with this family. Thank you so much.
Use up as many days as possible, so it's shortened that they'll be in this sequestered position there in the courtroom. Let's go to WRTV. It's our affiliate there.
Oh, really?
They have a report on what all happened on Saturday for day 2 of this trial.
The second day of the Delphi double murders trial was a bit emotional for the family, as testimony described how the girls were found back in 2017. Steve Mullen, who is the current investigator for the prosecutor's office and was the Delphi police chief in February of 2017, took to the stand to describe his timeline of what happened on February 13th. He also spent some time geographically explaining areas of the trails for the jury to better understand. Jake Johns, a Delphi resident, took to the stand next and testified to discovering Libby's shirt while searching near the riverbank. The final witness to take to the stand was Pat Brown, a Delphi resident and family friends of Libby German's grandparents. He testified to his search efforts on both the 13th and the 14th. He says after getting a phone call, he headed to an area near the High Bridge, ultimately discovering the girls' bodies. And when describing the moment he came across Abby and Libby, he started crying and had to pause for a moment and said, "We found them," and added at first he thought they were mannequins. The jurors were dismissed at around 11:35 in Carroll County. Caitlin Kendall, Scripps News.
Thanks to WRTV for that report. Jessica, your thoughts on what they saw on Saturday, but also the idea that this is a sequestered jury. How do you think that impacts things for one side or the other?
I forgot that they had trial on Saturday, and I couldn't imagine being that police officer. By him describing that he thought they were mannequins, it might be the first time he had ever seen somebody that was unalived. And I couldn't imagine that being the first thing you see unalive, 2 babies. That's horrible.
I actually like that they have the jury sequestered. I think there's a lot of information out there. And to a bit of the point that you were making earlier,
Overprotected said, y'all know they had all that cult stuff. Did y'all know February 13th is Lupercalia, the evil Valentine's Day? I would say, and in this case, it could be pertinent information because of the Odinism beliefs that are entangled in this case and could possibly be a contributing factor.
This is a case that's Indiana and in a small community. And we've already heard from some of the folks that have testified in this. They knew the girls, they know the grandparents, they know the family. So anytime you're with this, this jury, they want to get them in. They want to keep them as sequestered as possible to not be influenced by outside factors and to get a resolution. It's already been, as we know, 7 years, incoming in terms of getting this from when the actual murders took place to when justice may be served. And that's a very long time. I think this community needs closure and getting all of these things, as quickly and hopefully succinctly as possible so that the jury cannot say that there was any sort of outside influence, and allowing them to get back to work and to their lives, and hopefully to have some sort of closure for the families of the victims going forward is very important.
Absolutely. And that Richard Allen gets a fair trial.
Absolutely. That is number one there in that courtroom.
What's going on, guys?
This isn't easy to say.
Your mother and I think you're hooked on phonics.
It's preposterous.
I found this
trying to pull up
under your pillow
and see how Google pronounces it, but I can't get it to say it.
Hello, friends. It seems like the season of love is upon us.
Yeah, it says it's known as Lupercal, was a pastoral festival of ancient Rome observed annually on February 15th to purify the city, promoting health and fertility. Lupercalia was known as Dies Febutaris after the purification instruments called Febra, the basis for the month named Februaris. Okay, now that I've slaughtered that and we can all laugh. Let's see. Excuse me. She says crime photos revealed, but there's probably not any in here. Okay, so let's check out. Let's see what's going on with, real quick, Leilani Simon and see if that's live and what's going on and what was happening yesterday. Let's see who testified yesterday. And then we'll talk about the Black Swan ballerina and the motions entered in her case. Okay, so this is the... Hold on.
Municipalities, they have to be hidden, but this is generally what cell towers look like.
Okay,
moving on to slide 4.
FBI agent.
Yeah, so when you see that cell tower that's actually on the pole, a lot of people think of the pole or the apparatus as the tower, but the tower is actually the boxes that are on top of the poles.
Oh, okay. So we're going to watch
most
the
instances,
interrogation
about
video.
85% of all cell towers.
So after all this to get.
Okay. Catching up on chat real quick. Yeah, Anders, that's true. Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry to hear that, Overprotected. Yeah, I think it was a sacrifice too. I really do. Unfortunately, and it's real sad. Okay, so right now we're going to watch the interrogation of Leilani Simon. I'm tripping. I'm tripping. A lot of times I am, but not today. I am just sliding through to see what is interesting and what we would find pertinent in as far as this trial. So I wanted to skip so we could watch the interrogation videos and see what they have to say, and I'll add my thoughts as well. And we'll keep looking and checking for the dealers to be testifying.
Get to lunch.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. I thought that would be the response, and that was my hope that would be your response. So we're going.
Okay. So
retire.
Oh Lord, don't do this. I will cry. I will cry right here in front of everybody. Stop it. Thank you.
Weight of the FBI and the Chatham County Police Department. We're going to ensure that justice was served in this case, that we were going to find Quentin and bring anyone responsible for that to justice.
And that was on October 8th after the interview with Bridget Rock.
Absolutely.
That's very true, Cozy.
With that preview, I'll go ahead and publish this by playing it for the jury. I want to tell you, I might stop it from time to time and ask you kind of what was that question.
I'm glad he's always with you, Overprotected.
Audio is, I think it's passable, but it's not outstanding. Fair to say?
Right?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Yeah, please hit the like and subscribe. Consider joining the speculating family by hitting that subscribe button. Thank you so much.
Well, I just wanted to apologize. I think you, of all people, know how stressful this entire situation is. And we've been working 20-hour days, doing the best that we absolutely can just to find Quentin. And I hope you understand that. And the stress that's involved in that. It's on everybody. It is. And yesterday or 2 days ago, probably should have just walked away and then let my emotions get the best of me. And I want you to understand that I apologize for that. It's not lost on me. There's really, you don't have.
He's doing that to be relatable to her, and she is very manipulative by adding in that it's on everybody. It's on everybody. Like we can tell how manipulative she is as a person. Like, we know that she knows what happened while she's saying all this, and keeping that in mind, it just gives you insight into her personality and who she is as a person and her manipulation tactics.
Another adult, male figure that you.
I'll try to help every second.
So I'm sure you feel like a sort of abandoned. That's what you feel, when we had that conversation. And then we talked to your mom just 2 days ago. And your mom, tells us that it was just a day or so ago that your stepfather was able to give you a hug.
That's the first week that she was 16 years old. I needed that. You said no, it was like just a moment of comfort. That's what it was.
So I'm sorry, but there's some things, we'll talk about this. So what's going on at the house right now? Are you staying with your mom right now?
At the moment, and so we can get into the housing for the ministry. Because they're gonna help me get somewhere. And I'm gonna I'll give you all the address and everything here. But I'm trying to do that so we can move it up to the case.
Who all staying at the house right now?
Right now, my brother's gonna be there until the 18th, possibly longer. Paul's there. Everybody that's originally living there. But with the addition of my brother, Beth Tuesday, and he said the kids before. I got back when I left. And she took care of me. What's Phoebe? Jim, I'll tell you, we found Beth in bed. Yes. She was like, oh, there's nobody here. I was like, I'm just, we gotta check for safety. And she was like, came downstairs, and I'm just like, and she's like, okay, we got my phone. I was like, probably. We're working on getting that back to her before she leaves. I was like, probably.
With everybody there, has there been any additional searches that y'all got on your own, anything?
We found, there's one day that we got a psychic. And it said something about a container of books. Something like your mom sent me. She kind of forwarded along anything she's got. Yeah, when that happened, Mom, my friend went to the garage, even though we knew y'all searched it. We still went through every container we could, searched and looked.
It's really hard to understand. I can't even pick up everything she's saying. Yeah, closed captioning does not even decipher. Yeah, I see that you linked it. Thank you, Eek. I do have a Discord now. I'm working on getting it set up. I had a lot going on yesterday, and I wasn't able to figure all that out. I've got to watch a video on how to use it, so I'm still working on it. But we do have a Discord now if you want to join. Yeah, I was seeing what. Aw, we love you too. Overprotected. Thank you, Eek, for dropping the Discord. We love you all. Yes, we all love each other. We're all family here. I would probably also think it was Dominican people. Yeah, exactly, Anders. Oh no, you're good. You're good, Eek. No, I appreciate it. Okay, Cozy. Yeah, I've got to watch a video on it so I understand it. Like, I was trying to let it access some of my pictures, but not all of them. And it, like, I can't even fix the profile picture now because the one I want to use, it like doesn't come up when I try to use it. I've done something. So I'm going to work on figuring that out.
I was just like, oh no. What's the blonde lady's name again? That's the daughter. Little bitty. She is, and she was ready to she search everything. She's like escort everything. Like, y'all gonna get off the property. We're long behind and want to get down. I'm like, that's when Charlie was running around. I was like, these two are very similar. She's talking about she'll jump on top of the TV bar and look over at the person. Yeah, but she's been ready to search. She said they searched the canal, they searched the land. She was all done any more of that. Yeah, we've been trying not to trample on anything that could possibly be anything. Yeah. So honestly, I still like if you do go walk around, when you do see something, don't touch everything. Call us, take a picture of it, call them, send it to them, some location, don't touch it, whatever it is. Yeah, I don't want them walking into the woods or anything like that because there's sense and cover up something that could be there. Yeah. Well, that was the last thing I think the dogs were doing today since it went back to, I told you last time I talked to you directly when we went back, Tuesday? I don't remember the days of the week right now, Monday. Because like I said,
yeah, I like to keep the conversation going too.
The same way.
And talk about other things that I don't necessarily talk about on the live.
The dogs don't live here, so they have to do that on its own. But
That's kind of an issue thing with everything that we want to do to make sure that we do absolutely everything we can, and then we get it all right. We don't want to miss anything. And I know that's important to you. Right?
Yes.
So with that, I mean, just kind of, not wanting to put words, in your mouth, but being the time and space that's passed since we last talked, maybe, there's a chance that you were calling things, differently or something new that, it just didn't come up before that we didn't ask.
Yeah, we've been getting it to a long time every day. Well, and so why is Wednesday was the day of shock, right? And you're trying to get everything in order, but you can have.
Oh, thank you, Overprotected. Good morning, Bella. Good morning. Good morning.
It's, I said this to someone this week, but you ever drive home, you're like, how did I get here? Because you're on the side.
Thank you for being here.
You really think like, oh, there was a yellow car. And now you've had time to get further down the road. And so if you remember something differently right now, it's not because you were wrong then. Yeah. It's because, okay, I've had time to just kind of let it settle and see things more clearly when, the shock of it all has had a chance to kind of come down. So we're not going to come down if anything's different because there's a lot to be said for some time and space to kind of things that you didn't think about before because they weren't the big thing or,
So also that there's a little just space right there. Asking me that too. Can you think of any detail that you feel this?
She keeps closing her eyes and not making eye contact.
The only thing that makes sense, the only thing that
now she's making eye contact.
Is the door to the bathroom. It'll be from till 5:44. That is the only thing that can catch you from what I'm thinking.
And to be honest, we're double checking, beyond just that data that Joe had, to see like what does this really mean? Yeah. So we're again running through the carpet on every single thing.
So with that in mind, let's just kind of go through a few things. So let's just start with the Circle K. Tell me about the phone call that you made.
That's so sweet, Abella. Possibly. I bet that y'all are long lost twins. He's been running around and just having a lot of fun this morning. He's been excited and playing. It is super hard to understand her. I'm trying to hear everything she's saying. I will let you know what I pick up on. Overprotected.
That's a quick phone call. I can't honestly remember if it was on my phone or Jamie's phone. It was from one of their phones. I called him and I said, "Boy, they're not having it for me."
Phone call.
That's why I went and got whiskey, and I really did go to the original whiskey.
The Oreo.
Two words, and one still had something in it. And the one that had something in it was I got some good for her. And so okay, like normally they have it. Normally they do it. They did not have it. I guess their ship was coming the next day.
So she's talking about going to look for the Oreo. She's saying normally they have it, but they didn't that day.
Whatever, I used to work there, I believe on Saturdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays. And then after I went back up, I went home. I stood outside, purchased a big cigarette, oil, and moved on to it. I'm pretty sure I did have a little skirt shirt in there.
Oh wow, I was protected. Let's see.
When we look at the phone records, for that.
I'm gonna look for that, Jenny. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit.
To the Circle K.
Let's see.
So, just kind of help me understand that. Do you think another phone was used? It's possible that it was Spanish phone. So you think you use Spanish phone? It's possible. Because he has his phone right there all the time. I have really bad signal inside the house. I just grab it. I kind of wish I had this flip phone. I didn't want to get signal in the house.
They never said they were sales. to throughout the whole house.
Okay.
I wonder where it's at.
And the 911 telephone call, I have to say that when you put the statement together, you did a phenomenal job providing just a tremendous amount of detail that's been helpful for us throughout this entire process.
And I was speaking of them, can't find the doors, so they're in the way, if you want, pretty much screwed in at the phone.
Well, in that statement, you mentioned, or you put it in writing that you made a 911 call, but there's a mail.
All right, let me skip it ahead. I want to find these things. It's so hard to understand and hear.
Cute. It doesn't fit you. Just think of all your accomplishments. Like the time you almost put the
Sorry, I was kind of mesmerized for a second. Yeah.
So you got to understand this. So when in your house at 1:11,
Like, it's really hard to understand, so I'm going to skip through it.
Particular.
Let's see.
That's correct.
Endeavor.
Hey,
Correct.
Trixie. Good morning. Good morning, Trixie. Good morning.
And the Danny's phone, who was the special agent in charge of that one? Was that you or was that Agent Solomon as well?
The particular aspects, so both Agent Solomon and myself obtained the consent, from Mr. Youngkin to get the authorization to wiretap
Okay,
that
here we
phone.
go. Here we go.
But the day-to-day monitoring of that phone was Special Agent Solomon's responsibility.
Okay, and that's fine. So Solomon basically watched the video and audio from the hotel room and reviewed the tap on the phone, correct?
That's correct. Again, not solely her responsibility. There were, multiple, people reviewing that,
They
but
haven't
primarily
played it yet,
it
have
fell
they?
on her shoulders.
Okay, and that's fine. So, but you did interview Danny on the 5th, maybe the 6th, but definitely the 7th, correct?
That's correct. And again, I had, in between those times, I had multiple telephone conversations with Danny as well.
All right. And
Yeah, I try to share pictures of him.
do you recall the conversation and the interview you had with Danny on October 5th?
You have to give me more clarification on that, sir.
Well, have you, in
I didn't
preparation
miss
for
the
trial, have
wiretap,
you
did
reviewed
we?
that interview with him?
Which particular interview, sir?
The first interview you had with Mr. Youngkin.
I'm sure I have at some point.
Okay. And do you remember when he said there was nothing weird about her going to Arkwright Drive in that interview?
Not specifically, but again, she provided that information in the interview that I was present for, that she had been to Arkwright Drive 100 times or more.
Okay. Did he ever say that he had gone to Arkwright Drive?
I don't know that Danny had mentioned that to me, but we
Where's
do know
the
through the course of
wiretap?
investigation that Danny accompanied her. Either he was driving or the defendant was driving on the numerous occasions that they traveled to Arkwright Road.
Hold on a minute.
Did he ever talk about going out there by himself?
Not that I recall, no, sir.
Did he ever admit to going out there by himself, to the best of your knowledge? To you, at least.
Not that I recall.
Hold on just a minute.
Now,
I'm trying to find it on my phone.
in that initial interview, do you remember him saying that he was awake when she got back from Arkwright?
Yeah, I'm going to object on hearsay grounds to but if he's live, any further questions about what Danny did or didn't say? And he's testified at this point.
Your Honor, it's not hearsay. He's already testified, okay? This is the agent that conducted the interview. I have the absolute right on cross-examination to talk about the inconsistencies in Danny Youngkin's statements to him versus what he testified here in court. So whatever issue he has, it's not hearsay, number one. Danny's already testified this. Number two, the agent has the right to testify as to his recollections. If he doesn't recollect it, great, let me move on. But if he does, it's proper cross-examination question, Judge.
Mr. Dole. I just don't think that's a proper reading of the current rules of evidence that have been in place for the last 10 years or so. If there was something that Mr. Youngkin was confronted with while he was up there and given a chance to confirm, deny, explain.
Everybody saying good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
If not,
Good morning,
you can't just ask
everybody.
the witness what
I'm looking specifically for the
witness
wiretap.
just
So
said, just because
be
they
right
testified.
here with you.
Before we go any further into the weeds in this argument, I'm going to allow you leeway to go ahead and ask these questions. I'm overruling the objection.
Thank you, Judge. So, Agent Snyder, do you remember Danny saying that he, at 3:30 when he got up to feed Sky, that Quentin was okay? And he saw him?
I don't recall that, no, sir.
Okay. Do you remember him saying at 5:30 that Quentin was okay?
I do recall Danny saying that on October the 5th. But in the October the 5th interview, it was unfathomable to Danny, that something like this had taken place. So while Danny did on October 5th during that interview mention that he did indeed see Quentin, we further went down that path with Danny on multiple occasions, specifically October 7th. And he could not recall seeing Quentin as he walked out of that bed that morning. It was a rush that morning. He was late for work. The positioning of his bed.
Your Honor, at this point in time, I'm going to object. It's non-responsive to the question I asked, number one. He's basically giving a narrative to what was basically a yes or no question. I understand he's trained to do that, but it's still improper.
Mr. Dean.
The general proposition that the witness is allowed to finish his answer.
I think
I was just sitting in the hallway with eyes on the different doors, and she was sitting in an interview room.
At some point,
I think it's right after this. Goodbye, Cozy. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you everybody else for being here. I think it's right after this where they talk about what she says in the wiretaps, and this one I think is a little bit clearer. So we'll be able to hear this interrogation a little better. Thank you everybody again for being here.
At what point did she open up to you about some of her behavioral
No
issues?
doubt overprotected.
She did.
I'm going to play for you a clip from State's Exhibit 13. It's a file bearing the file name Interview Room 2126 to 2229.
Anything? Can we sit down for a little bit?
Okay.
Thank you so much for being patient with us. Seriously. Well, I'm trying to work through and figure out. So, thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Did I do well with that?
Yeah, I appreciate you.
As much detail as I could. I was being like, this is who.
A lot of good detail in here.
I mean, this is the wrong clip. I'm looking for Interview Room 2057 to 2103.
There are days that I wake up or days that something so little just might happen. And it's like a trigger. And it's not. It's almost like I'm a completely different person. The way I talk, the way I move, the way I look at you, everything, even my tone of voice. Do you feel that happening? You know? Where it's like, when it happens, I've finally reached a certain anger.
You're funny.
Or whatever it might be at that moment, that I just, it's like a switch. Yeah. I don't even realize it until after I've calmed down that I just seriously tripped on you and treated you like that for a reason. And then I'm left apologizing to everybody that I'm sorry, I'm crazy. I don't know what happened. I don't even know why I did that. And half the time when it happens or randomly happens like that, and it's not like the slowly transition or whatever.
She's given us a lot of insight into her, and I don't know how she thought that it wouldn't be used against her to prove that she snapped and was unstable. Can y'all understand it? She's just telling everything right now.
Because I don't know how to explain it.
I wish I could paint that.
If I'm doing pretty good throughout the day and I got a good day overall, and then something might trigger me, it's slower. Okay. I can feel it. I can feel myself changing the way I talk, the way I think, the opinions I have, everything. I can feel the difference. But when it happens, like a day like today with the amount of stuff going on and stress and emotion or whatever, that's just not.
So that was day one of the investigation, right?
Correct.
On that day, was there a point where you spent
Day
some
one?
time alone with
Good
the
Lord.
defendant in a setting that wasn't recorded?
Yes, at some point around that time period of that video clip.
Did it have something to do with a cigarette or something like that?
She needed a smoke break outside, so I walked out with her.
At some point during that interaction, maybe it was another one that day, did she say something to you about getting a tattoo?
Yes, she showed me her Hawaiian symbol tattoo about the waves going up and down and said that she wanted to get a tattoo in honor of Quentin along with it.
And
wow.
This was on October.
Yeah, I could tell just by, having previously used substances that she's on some substances there, and evidently she's feeling real good and just felt like sharing everything. Especially what she just said, that she wanted to get a tattoo in honor of Quentin, letting us know that he's no longer here. Lord, girl. Dumb criminals at work again.
October 5.
It was.
She's talking about getting a tattoo.
I want to live in Wyoming
in honor
or Minnesota.
At this point in
I
time,
wish.
Was she still kind of representing the story that Quentin had been abducted?
Yes.
Was anybody yet talking about Quentin being dead?
We suspected it within the investigative team, but it had not been discussed outside of the investigative team.
I'd like to ask you a couple questions about your involvement over the following days. Did you follow up in reference to Danny's workplace?
I did.
Can you describe that follow-up, please? Without talking about what anybody said to you, but what did y'all go out there to do?
Detective Noble and I met with Danny and Leilani's supervisor and spoke with him. He put us in touch with the
Overprotected says I'm the typo queen. Let me tell you real quick, honey. I got a little phone, and most of the time I have these fake nails on, so it makes it hard to type. Like, I have made thumbnails, description box, hashtags, comments. Like, I'm sure half the people that watch my videos think that I'm drunk half the time when I'm typing because of all the typos, and I don't even drink. This keypad is so small in my fingers, I can't hit it right, like hit the keys right to make the right words, and then it'll autocorrect to a word that's misspelled. So don't feel bad. It's been in thumbnails and comments, all over my channel.
corporate security who had video footage from the plant or the warehouse.
And did they turn footage around to you?
They did.
Why was it important to you to go out and talk to Danny's boss and to get video footage of what he looked like when he was leaving work?
We were doing our
I didn't know
best
that,
to
Anders.
Corroborate every single statement that had been made to us in the previous 24 hours, to include how and when Danny learned that Quentin was missing.
How he reacted?
Correct.
I'd like to draw your attention to the defendant's October 8th interview with Bridget Rock at the FBI office in Savannah.
Okay.
Were you present for that?
I not in the interview room, but I was in the office observing.
How did you observe that interview?
Closed circuit television through the office.
Okay. So did you watch it as it was occurring?
I watched much of it as it was occurring. I was also watching Danny in a simultaneous interview.
Did you observe any unusual behavior by the defendant on that day with reference to Bridget Rock's belongings or equipment or anything?
I did.
Look at her eyes.
Agent Rock had stepped out of the room, but the cameras were still rolling, and the defendant walked up to Miss Brock's computer system and unplugged it. And when it made a noise, she plugged it back in and sat back down.
What? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to catch you.
I'm sorry, that was after looking at the cameras and down the hallway.
Was there something about Bridget Rock's notes as well?
She walked up to the damn officer's computer, unplugged it, and then plugged it back in. This bitch was high as hell. What the hell? What the
Not that I
hell?
observed.
Okay. That evening,
Wiretap,
October
okay.
8th, that was
Wait,
the
box.
hotel
Okay, I don't know
surveillance
what
operation.
It was.
And how many nights did that go on for? Was it one?
One night.
Okay, just the one night. Were you involved in proposing that idea to Daniel Youngkin?
Yes,
And that would have been like the day before on the 7th.
it was.
Okay. Tell us about his reaction to that proposal.
The day he came to us, he was pretty broken in a lot of ways. He was still trying to figure out what he believed had happened. He was worried about his child, and was beginning to have conflicts between believing Leilani less, but also his loyalties to her, and was working through that. So when we got to the point of talking through a lot of his concerns there, he was willing, and actually was the one who said, are you going to want to wire up the hotel room? And we said, only with your permission. We wouldn't do that without your permission. So
Are you saying he, like, guessed? I want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
We had
At that point, were y'all planning to ask him that?
We were planning to ask him that, so we were going down that road, but he was the first one to address wiring the room.
Okay, so he's the one who brought it up, even though you were about to?
Right.
Okay. Can you discuss briefly just the logistics of setting this up and then the monitoring plan that was put in place?
We had 2 adjacent hotel rooms at a nearby hotel, and our tech team worked their magic and used their special techniques to put audio and video monitoring equipment in the one room, and the live monitoring occurred right next door. So as we were in the next door room, we were observing.
I'm thinking that they're talking about it right now. The only thing I've seen so far before this really is the first interrogation that we really couldn't hear. So I'm looking through again just to see on my phone, but I don't know if it's been played yet. I'm looking on my phone there, but the only thing I've seen so far is them talking about the cell towers and then the interrogation where we couldn't hear her.
Via video feed and audio, what was happening right next to us.
Can you, were you involved in monitoring it yourself?
I was there the entire time that they were awake.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you had the opportunity to see all their interactions?
I did.
Can you just sort of, I understand we're talking about like a whole night,
Mm-hmm.
but can you kind of summarize the nature of their interactions?
They were emotional, sometimes combative. They were never on the same page with what was going on with Quentin with the investigation. They took breaks to just go get a cigarette or go get a drink and kind of come back.
Was he asking her about the truthfulness or lack thereof of the Oragel story?
Repeatedly.
And what was she saying in response to those inquiries?
She doubled down on the Oragel and brought up her alibi with Miss D.
Is it fair to say that she was telling Danny the same lie that she was telling you?
Objection, Your Honor, leading questions.
I mean, the leading question is a question that calls for a particular answer. It's a yes or no question.
He is correct. Anybody with your question?
Is it fair to say that she was telling Danny the same lie that she was telling the police?
Yes. She was telling Danny the same story. She was sorry.
I'll just withdraw the questions.
Yes.
Is there anything that occurred during this full evening and night of hotel recordings that?
Okay, hold on.
Narrative question. Now,
I know he's talking about it here.
I don't know how one could possibly object to a question that hasn't been finished.
We're gonna
First of all,
go-
and I can assure you it does not call for a narrative response.
I've been here for over a week, Judge.
And- be careful with the microphones for Ms. Natalie.
It's an open-ended question, Judge. It doesn't ask for a specific answer unless the witness testifies to what they want to testify. That's exactly what a narrative question is, and that's improper.
We're gonna try right here.
Just wanted to make sure that you didn't have some last questions you wanted to ask.
If I had, I would have lost.
Okay, Mr. Dean, thank you. Mr. Hilliard?
Thank you, Judge. Hey, Snyder, how are you doing?
Good, sir. So,
Pretty good, I can't some of the questions I have are a little bit repetitive, but it's just to kind of get straight in my mind. You're in the Marine Corps, correct?
that's correct.
Okay. How long are you in the Marine Corps?
I had,
All right, I'm still checking.
approximately 8 years active duty, and I just retired as a reserve officer about 2 years ago.
Well, thank you for your service, Agent Schneider. And then you went into the FBI, correct?
That's correct.
And how long have you been there?
18 years.
And during that 18 years, what is the bulk of what you've done there?
We're in a small office here in Savannah. So for 15 years, I've been in Savannah. I've worked a little bit of everything from violent crimes against children to both international and domestic terrorism. And then for the past 10 years, I've been the coordinator for the FBI Southeast Georgia Violent Crimes Task Force.
Okay. And that's for the last 10 years, right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Does it have a cool acronym? Southeast Georgia Violent Crime Task Force?
Yeah,
That's a
you
mouthful.
take the first letter of every one of those words, and that's the acronym.
Okay. How would you say that then?
I wouldn't even want to, hazard a guess.
All right. So when you got involved in this particular case, you pretty much were involved on October 5th, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And on October 5th, what exactly did you do on October 5th?
October 5th started out with a call to Detective Lemons to determine whether or not Chatham County needed the FBI's assistance.
No, I don't mean the rehash of what you've already said you did. I mean, your actual involvement. Did you conduct the interviews on October 5th? Let me ask a more specific question. So on October 5th, did you conduct the interview on October 5th?
We conducted multiple interviews on October 5th.
And who did you interview on October 5th?
October 5th, specifically the defendant.
Until it's already happened. Until it's already happened. Yeah. And then you wake up and you're back to yourself.
Okay, I don't mean to keep skipping through, but there's an important part here that we need to hear. Okay. She talks about cocaine use and being all kinds of fucked up. It might be right after this.
Just to recap a few things from that interview, I don't know how well people could hear it, so I'm just going to be on the safe side here.
Yeah, thanks.
Did she ultimately tell you that the Percocet she had obtained that night was from Craig?
She did. That's correct. Yes, sir.
And this was something that she had
You're
identified.
good. I'm trying to find this wiretap thing.
But in this
I
interview,
want to
she
hear
confirmed
it.
that Craig and Rad were the same person.
Yes, sir.
And in this interview, she admitted that she had met him at Park Wright Road, not Flacco's Tacos.
That's correct.
What did she ultimately say eventually about whether she had met Misty that night?
Ultimately, as a result of the interview, she provided that she hadn't indeed met Missy that night.
And that was only after first telling you in here that I did meet Missy 100%.
On multiple occasions, yes.
What did she ultimately say about whether she had gotten Orajel that night and where she had gotten it?
She couldn't get off the fact that she did get Orajel. So after we came to the determination that she didn't get Orajel from Mitzi, she continued to state that she had the Orajel, found it in her car when she got back to the house.
Is it the case that she offered this information about cocaine use eventually to explain her shifting stories?
That's correct.
And what did she say to you about the frequency of her cocaine use around this time frame? Not just that night, but just the frequency of her cocaine use.
Listen to this shit.
Yes, sir. So that she was a daily cocaine user and she was using cocaine, Percocet, marijuana on October the 4th, as well as the early morning hours of October the 5th.
And specifically, did she tell you that she had been using cocaine throughout the night that night?
She did, yes, sir.
Did she tell you that after she had gotten home from the dumpster, she had hit another line or two?
She did.
And did she tell you that she was all types of fucked up that night?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
At one point, did she say that I was?
Y'all, she looked at this FBI agent and was like, bruh, I was all types of fucked up that night. You know what I'm saying? What the fuck?
So messed up on drugs.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
And did she tell you that if I was so fucked up that I did something, I'd take responsibility?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
All right.
She said, I'm all types of
Were you
fucked up,
involved in
man.
coordination and oversight of the landfill search?
I was, yes, sir. I was.
Now, can you tell us generally, in relation to the search area pointed out by the landfill manager and then later outlined by Team Adam, where were Quentin's remains ultimately found in relation to that box or stuff across there?
They were found in the lower left portion of the box that Team Adam had identified for the search team as the area of search.
5 by
Now,
1, 10
did
minutes.
you all keep an open mind during this investigation
Right, so maybe a
and
little
take
bit after
seriously
that.
the
Okay,
other Paul
thank
and Danny
you.
as suspects?
We did.
Why did the
Let's go
investigation
there.
ultimately focus in on the defendant?
Ultimately, there were 3 individuals in that house, 3 adults in that house. And of those 3 adults, there was only one that continued to lie to us throughout court
So it's either going to be at 5,
with an
10, or
opioid, a
6,
fentanyl
10.
type drug. So it's
Because I know she does.
it's a lesser degree of a fentanyl drug in the opioid classification.
Hold on, let me go.
And I assume cocaine. Well, let me ask you this.
We're going to listen
Do
to
you have any
this. I'm
knowledge
going
of
to check
what the effect
Grizzlies
of a
and see
perk
if I
30
can
is on
find it.
somebody if they take it? If you don't, that's fine.
No, I think the defendant explained that herself.
Okay. And what was that effect then?
Best I can recall from seeing the video that you watched was a drunken state, a loopy state. The specific pill that she took had a delayed reaction, she said. I couldn't explain past that.
Then that's fine. You might not know. What about cocaine?
What she was doing in the perk, taking the Percocet, the cocaine, and marijuana, commonly referred to on the street, if you will, as speedballing. And those three drugs are what she admittedly was on that night.
Does cocaine put you to sleep, or is it more of a stimulant?
Again, I couldn't tell you, for sure, but it's my understanding that it affects people in different ways. Some individuals, it acts as a stimulant. And some individuals it does put to sleep.
Well, based upon your experience and training, okay, what have you been trained that the effects of it are?
Okay, so it is with the woman. So we're going to go back with the woman real quick. With the lady on the stand. And we'll try to go back to where we were at with her. Hold on just a minute. All right, we're going to start with the woman. It's while she's testifying that they have the wiretap scenario. So we're going to listen to her.
An FBI special agent?
For 6 years.
And can you tell us a little bit about your educational background before joining the FBI?
I attended Georgia Tech,
Right.
majored in economics, international affairs, and French, and went straight to Tulane for my master's in business administration and finance and entrepreneurship. Following graduation, I joined the FBI as an analyst, where I worked in Charlotte and the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force Fusion Center in Washington, D.C., before becoming an agent for 8 years.
Okay. So after working in Charlotte as an analyst, you went to the academy, I guess?
I went to Washington, D.C. at our headquarters for 3 years and then the academy.
Okay. And is Savannah, where you've been, Savannah, Georgia, I should say, where you've been the entire time as a full-fledged special agent?
That is correct.
Okay. Do you work closely with Brad Snyder?
I do.
I want to ask you about your involvement in the case. Did you become involved on day one on October 5th?
I did.
And did you go to Chatham County Police Department headquarters and participate in an interview or some interviews?
I did.
What detective were you paired up with?
Detective Nobles.
And whom did you interview that day of the three?
Daniel Youngkin.
Okay. Can you tell us about his level of cooperation in the day one interviews?
He was forthcoming in regards to items about Quentin. He minimized on drug use and was defensive of Leilani.
What do you mean by defensive about Leilani?
He believed anything that she had told him that day and was told us he believed it was true.
Okay. So he didn't want to believe that she had done anything, basically.
Correct.
Can you tell us about his demeanor and tone in the interviews and his willingness to answer questions?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for opinion.
You're asking about the demeanor that she observed?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna.
I interviewed him twice that day, once around 1:30 in the afternoon and once around 11 p.m. So it was a long day. He was
I'm sorry,
willing
Judy.
to answer
Everybody.
questions. I'd say by 11 was pretty tired of
Thank you,
any line of
Jenny.
questioning.
Okay. After your, well,
I think
let
we're
me ask
good
you
with
this. At
her.
some point that
There was
day,
a
did you go
picture
to
I
the
wanted to
residence at
see. That's why I took it all the way back.
I did.
And where did that fit into your involvement at Chatham County Police Department headquarters that you've been talking about?
After my first interview of Danny, the group kind of reconvened on what had happened in the
All
different
right, we'll
interviews.
just listen to her.
And because there was no need to continue talking at that point, Taylor Burns and I drove to the Buckhalter Road residence to assist with the search.
Now, were you present when Chatham County Police Department forensics were photographing the residents and various outbuildings and things?
I was.
And did you go in the garage yourself?
I did.
I'd like to display an image from State's Exhibit 10. It's image 109 in State's Exhibit 10. And let me see whether I can get the screen to cooperate here.
No, Anders, you're good. We're going to watch this and then we're going to jump to Sarah Boone and the Black Swan ballerina filed some motions yesterday. We'll talk about that.
All right. See that up on the screen?
I do.
What is that red thing? First of all, what room or building are we in at that house right now?
This is the garage outbuilding beyond, like separate from the house and the pool area.
What is that red thing towards the bottom center of the picture?
That's a Mickey Mouse race car driver toy.
Is it like a stuffy kind of thing?
It is.
Okay. Can you describe how that thing looked to you that day?
As you can see, it's just kind of thrown in a garage with a bunch of tools and covered in cobwebs and looks like it's been there for a minute.
Was this significant to you at the time?
It was.
And why is that?
Because Leilani had reported Quentin missing with his favorite toy, a Mickey Mouse toy.
And is that something that anybody else mentioned to you, him having a favorite toy, Mickey Mouse toy?
No. No one knew about a Mickey Mouse toy when I asked them about it.
Well, let me show you a video clip. At some point, did you have an exchange with the defendant while she was between interviews?
I did.
And can you tell us what was going on at that point? Like, where were you and where was she?
During the resident
That was
search,
really
after
sad.
it had gotten into
Yeah,
nighttime, I was called back to Chatham County Police because they needed more people to escort the three individuals that were still there. So at that point, I was just sitting in the hallway with eyes on the different doors, and she was sitting in an interview room.
At some point, did she open up to you about some of her behavioral issues or anger issues?
She did.
I'm going to play for you a clip from State's Exhibit 13. It's a file bearing the file name Interview Room 2126 to 2229.
I know we're watching this again, but watch how open she is. Like, you can tell she's high AF.
Yeah,
as much detail as I could, but I was being like, this is who.
Look at her. High as hell.
This is the wrong clip. I'm looking for Interview Room 2057 to 2103.
There are days that I wake up, there are days that something so little just might happen, and it's like a trigger. And it's not. It's almost like I'm a completely different person. The way I talk, the way I move, the way I look at you, everything, even my tone of voice. You feel that happening? You know, fair to play. When it happens, I finally reached a certain level of anger or stress or whatever it might be at that moment that I just it's like a switch. Yeah. I don't even realize it until after I've calmed down that I just seriously tripped on you and treated you like that reason. You know, and then I'm left apologizing to everybody that I'm sorry, I'm crazy, I don't know what happened. I don't even know I did that. And half the time when it happens or randomly happens like that, it's not like the slowly
See how active she is, how fast she's talking, her nose is red, she's sniffling. Girl. She could be crying, but all the other shit.
I don't even know how to explain it. If I'm doing pretty good throughout the day and I got a good day overall, and then something might trigger me, it's slower. I can feel it. I can feel myself changing the way I talk, the way I think, the opinions I have.
So Overprotected said, so I have a legal question. Okay, so in the Gypsy Rose stuff, it said it was an election year, and that's why she got a light sentence. With the chickens are clucking. Okay, with Delphi, they are talking corruption and stuff I don't understand. Sorry about that noise. What it is like if there's an election year, they're saying that somebody might give a lighter sentence to be, or a heavier sentence to be more accepted by the public, so that the public will take into consideration their ruling in a certain case and say, oh, I'm going to vote for that person this year because they ruled in this case how I like them to rule. So they'll say things like, well, it's an election year. And usually what that means is that they're just going out of their way to do something to please the public so they can get reelected. I don't know if you can hear it. Hold on. You hear it? There's chickens here. They run around outside. All right, I'm going to play this now.
Like, I think feel the difference. Well, when it happens, like, they like today with the amount of stuff going on and stress and emotion or whatever, that's just not.
So that was day one of the investigation, right?
Correct.
On that day, was there a point where you spent some time alone with the defendant in a setting that wasn't recorded?
Yes, at some point around that time period of that video clip.
Did it have something to do with a cigarette or something like that?
She needed a smoke break outside, so I walked out with her.
At some point during that interaction, or maybe it was another one that day, did she say something to you about getting a tattoo?
Yes, she showed me her Hawaiian symbol tattoo about the waves going up and down and said that she wanted to get a tattoo in honor of Quentin along with it.
And this was on October 5?
It was.
She was talking about getting a tattoo with it?
In honor of him, yes.
Okay. At this point in time, was she still kind of representing the story that Quentin had been abducted?
Yes.
Was anybody yet talking about Quentin being dead?
We suspected it within the investigative team, but it had not been discussed outside of the investigative team.
I'd like to ask you a couple questions about your involvement over the following days. Did you follow up in reference to Danny's workplace?
I did.
Can you describe that follow-up, please, without talking about what anybody said to you, but what did y'all go out there to do?
Detective Noble and I met with Danny and Leilani's supervisor and spoke with him. He put us in touch with the corporate security who had video footage from the plant or the warehouse.
And did they turn footage around to you?
They did.
Why was it important to you to go out and talk to Danny's boss and to get video footage of what he looked like when he was leaving work?
We were doing our best to corroborate every single statement that had been made to us in the previous 24 hours, to include how and when Danny learned that Quentin was missing.
How he reacted?
Correct.
I'd like to draw your attention to the defendant's October 8th interview with Bridget Rock at the FBI office in Savannah.
Okay.
Were you present for that?
Not in the interview room, but I was in the office observing.
How did you observe that interview?
Closed circuit television through the office.
Okay. So did you watch it as it was occurring?
I watched much of it as it was occurring. I was also watching Danny in a simultaneous interview.
Did you observe any unusual behavior by the defendant on that day with reference to Bridget Rock's belongings or equipment or anything?
I did. Agent Brock had stepped out of the room, but the cameras were still rolling, and the defendant walked up to Miss Brock's computer system and unplugged it. And when it made a noise, she plugged it back in and sat back down.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to catch you.
I'm sorry, that was after looking at the cameras and down the hallway.
Was there something about Bridget Brock's notes as well that had been left on the desk?
Not that I observed.
Okay. That evening, October 8th, that was the hotel surveillance operation?
It was.
And how many nights did that go on for? Was it one?
One night.
Okay, just the one night. Were you involved in proposing that idea to Daniel Youngkin?
Yes.
And that would have been like the day before the 7th?
It was.
Okay. Tell us about his reaction to that proposal.
The day he came to us, he was pretty broken in a lot of ways. He was still trying to figure out what he believed had happened. He was worried about his child, and was beginning to have conflict between believing Leilani less, but also his loyalties to her, and was working through that. So when we got to the point of talking through a lot of his concerns there, he was willing, and actually was the one who said, are you going to want to wire up the hotel room? And we said, only with your permission. We wouldn't do that without your permission. So
Are you saying he guessed? I want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
We had it.
Were you planning to ask him that?
We were planning to ask him that. So we were going down that road, but he was the first one
thank
to
you.
address
I love
wiring
the
room.
colors too. I
Okay, so
thought
he's
they
the
were
one who
pretty.
brought it up.
I love the pink. Danny said, I smell BS. Let's wire this thing up and let's get this done.
I know you were about to.
Right.
Okay. Can you discuss briefly just the logistics of setting
Yeah,
this up
overprotected
and
for
the
real. We got the whole
monitoring
farm
plan that's
going
going
on over here.
We had 2 adjacent hotel rooms at a nearby hotel, and our tech team worked their magic and used their special techniques to put audio and video monitoring equipment in the one room, and the live monitoring occurred right next door. So as we were in the next door room, we were observing via video feed and audio what was happening right next to us.
Can you, were you involved in monitoring it yourself?
I was there the entire time that they were awake.
Okay.
Yes.
And so if you had the opportunity to see all their interactions?
I did.
Can you just sort of, I understand we're talking about like a whole night, but can you kind of summarize the nature of their interactions?
They were emotional, sometimes combative.
Oh, I'm sorry, overprotected.
They were never on the same page
Danny
with what was going on with Quentin with the investigation. They took breaks to just go get a cigarette or go get a drink and kind of come back.
Was he asking her about the truthfulness or lack thereof of the Origel story?
Repeatedly.
And what was she saying?
Repeatedly.
In response to those inquiries?
She doubled down on the Origel and brought up her alibi with Misty.
Is it fair to say that she was telling Danny the same lie that she was telling you?
Objection, Your Honor, leading questions.
I mean, the leading question is a question that calls for a particular answer. It's a yes or no question.
He is correct. You can go ahead with your question.
Is it fair to say that she was telling Danny the same lie that she was telling the police?
Yes. She was telling Danny the same story. She was, sorry.
I'll just withdraw the questions.
Yes.
Is there anything that occurred during this full evening and night of hotel recordings that should,
Your Honor, it's a narrative question now. Open-ended and broad.
I don't know how one could possibly object to a question that hasn't been finished, first of all, and I can assure you it does not call for a narrative response.
I've been here for over a week, Judge.
And- Be careful with the microphones for Ms. Natalie.
It's an open-ended question, Judge. It doesn't ask for a specific answer unless the witness testifies to what they want to testify. That's exactly what a narrative question is, and that's improper.
I'm gonna overrule and allow Mr. Dean to ask this question.
Was there anything that occurred during the hotel surveillance operation that suggested to you that Danny knew more than he was letting on or anything along those lines?
No.
I'd like to play a couple of clips from these recordings that have already been admitted into evidence and ask you a couple questions about them, okay?
Okay.
No, I was looking for the wiretap.
This is from State's Exhibit
It's going to
32,
be here in a minute.
The file beginning with 1941.
They're talking about it now. We're trying to listen to the wiretap, and so we're waiting for that. Thank you, Trixie, for asking. So this is going to be the wiretap right here.
Before I ask you this question. No, because I need to know. Are you going to get angry?
I can't tell you I'm getting angry with all the questions.
Why did you lie to me about the Oreo?
I didn't. I did not lie to you about the Oreo.
So you went and met Miss.
Yes, and I drove there and I drove out. And they tried to say that again. I asked them to show me the picture, Missy, or whatever. Did y'all speak to my phone late? Did you speak to her? Did you speak to her husband? So I wanted to know. You know, and they said her husband. Why didn't you speak to her?
I stopped the playback at 1942-18 on the timestamp. What was that claim that the defendant just made about what the FBI had told her as to whom they had interviewed in reference to the Misty story? What did she say there?
She stated we had not spoken to the person she referenced as Misty, but we had spoken to that person's husband.
She said that y'all told her that.
Correct.
Okay. And this is on the night of the 8th, right?
Correct.
You said you were there for observing Bridget Brock's interview with the defendant earlier on this day, right?
Yes.
And anybody from the FBI told her anything like that?
No.
I'm opening up the clip on the same exhibit, file name that begins 2029. And I'm going to start the playback at 20:33:05 on the timestamp.
And you went and met Missy.
You went and met Missy, got Oreo.
And you said they told her?
I think so, yes.
What did she say?
And she confirmed it.
She confirmed
I'm
it?
pretty sure, yes. It's not like they sat there and told me what was said.
Oh, but they.
They said that they spoke to Missy and they didn't question me no more about Oreo.
Oh, okay.
What we just heard there, is that an accurate characterization of the defendant's interactions with Bridget Brock during that interview earlier that day?
No.
Okay, Abella, sorry about that. The Oragel story was that she left that night, and the reason she left that night was to go get Oragel from her coworker, because there was none in the house, but there was actually like 3 tubes at the house, and she said she had called the Kangaroo, but which is a gas station, but the Kangaroo was out of Oragel, so she called Misty to meet Misty to get Oragel, but she was really meeting the dealer man and then dumping Quentin's body, or I don't know which one happened first, but I think she met the man first and then later left again to go throw that baby away. And the story was that she left to get Oragel.
Sometime shortly after this, October 8th, hotel room monitoring thing, is that when the phone wire operation started?
It started on October 9th, yes.
And was Danny cooperative with that as well?
Yes, he and his mother gave consent
Thank
for
you,
us to
Trixie,
monitor
for
his
that
cell phone.
clarification.
Were you involved in the monitoring of that wiretap moving forward in time?
I was.
Were you like the point person for it?
I was. I reviewed it every day.
I want to move forward to the October 12th interview. We've heard testimony from Special Agent Snyder about this. I just want to ask you about a couple of things. Was there a point, what's the main point of bringing her in? Were you bringing her in to notify her of anything in particular that day on October 12th?
That was the day that we provided the death notifications and notification of the landfill search.
I do have it sped up to 1.25 so we can get through it. I just want to reiterate what Trixie's saying. Trixie's first comment was the picture that Billy Joe got of Quentin's remains in a box with a flag wrapped around it was claimed to have been taken by Jennifer Coffindoffer. And she said Quentin was at Quantico, not in the box. And then Trixie says, well, it was testified that this woman and another agent is believed placed Quentin in the box and gently wrapped it up and took a picture and gave it to Leilani and Billy Joe. So Jennifer Coffindoffer lied big time. Yeah, I've heard some things. I watch Nonsense. And, you know, Nonsense is a very good channel. She's very informative. And I would definitely say subscribe to her because she does get good information. She's really good at timelines and breaking down and pulling clips. I really like that about her. But I never really knew Jennifer Coffindoffer before that. I think I maybe had watched one of her videos, and Nonsense has definitely called out Jennifer Coffindoffer for being a big liar. And, you know, like, if you like her attitude or not, it doesn't really matter. Like, Nonsense is not going to lie about something like that. She proves receipts and evidence. So, you know, she's very informative. She's a good channel to watch.
Search to the family members.
And at what point in that day,
wow,
that interview, did you notify the defendant of that?
Yep, and Amazon, they had that too.
We never actually said that Quentin was dead. With her, it was understood. So
that's crazy.
Maybe halfway through the time, we made it clear, but we never said the word dead.
At some point during that interview, did you tell her something to the effect of, we're about to start searching that landfill and we're 98% sure we're going to find Quentin in it?
I was very confident we were going to find Quentin in the landfill when I spoke to her, yes.
Did you tell her that?
Yes.
How did she react to that?
She said he wasn't in the bag, but it was hard to characterize. It wasn't shock, which is the most surprising thing of it.
Did you inform her mother, the defendant's mother, Billy Joe Howell, of the same thing?
Wow. About an hour later.
Yeah, was that after the defendant's interview was concluded?
Right, exactly.
Where were you when you informed the defendant's mother of that?
Brad and our victim specialist and I went to the Buckholder Road residence and informed her in her living room.
And how did she react when you told her that?
I told her in order. I told her I was going to tell her 3 things, and when she was done processing one, we would move to the next. So the first thing I told her was that Quentin had died, and she showed anguish. When she was ready to hear the next thing, I told her that we were going to find him in the landfill and that we would be announcing that search was commencing. And she pulled back from me and she said, "My baby is in the trash." And
you got her hearsay. She knows that. I'm sorry.
Sustained.
Wow, this is interesting.
Please.
The witness is describing Billy Joe Howell as asking a question. And it can't be a statement offered for the truth. It's a reaction.
She can offer a reaction. But the question, well, what she
it
said
does,
was what she
Abellis.
said,
It
what
really
Billy Joe
does.
said.
When you, I understood.
Yes.
When you said that to Billy Joe Howell, that you believed him to be in the landfill and that you're going to find him in the landfill, did she make any statements of fact to you in response to that?
no,
How did she react?
shock, horror, disbelief, anguish that there were 4 other people that we then notified that were at the house. And it was a picture of 5 different versions of English.
And was there a contrast there in how those people reacted and how the defendant had reacted earlier that day when you told her?
Yes.
Now, what was your, I want to ask you some questions about October 24th.
Okay.
Okay, but first I'd just like to ask you about, what was your typical day like between October 12th and October 24th? What did that look like for you?
Landfill operations commenced a few days following the 12th. So as those were going, I would get to the landfill for the sunrise brief to try to represent the case team and give some sort of morale or update motivation. I would go back to the office and review Danny's calls and texts from the previous day and attend to any investigative or administrative work that needed to be done. We were continuously
Yeah, I
following
agree with
leads
all
from the
of you.
public and additional investigative avenues to make sure that we didn't close any doors too soon. And then Taylor and I would drive to the landfill to meet the team as they were wrapping up ahead of their lunch break so we could check boots, give updates, check on the status of everything, and kind of go in with everybody, and then back to the office.
Now, moving to October 24th, on this day, did the defendant make any recorded statements to anybody other than law enforcement?
Yeah, she was on the local news.
And did you watch that news interview?
I did.
Do you see in front of you an exhibit marked as State's Exhibit 71?
I do.
All right. Your Honor, this is a certified copy of the defendant's October 24th news interview with WTSA, supported by the testing certificate. I would move this in State 71 at this time.
Watch Billy Joe's face
Okay.
with this. You can just tell when she looks over at Leilani that she knows.
Do you see in front of you a disc marked as State's Exhibit 72?
I do.
And I know.
Do you know what that is? You need to pull it out of the envelope to see or what?
It's labeled WTOC interview redacted.
Okay. How does that exhibit differ from the one you just introduced?
This one is titled, Exhibit 71 is titled WTOC interview.
Okay. But I mean, what is 72 in relation to 71?
72 is what was shown on the news.
Okay.
And the 71 is the unredacted footage from WTOC.
Okay. And so 72 is?
What was shown on the news from WTOC
Okay.
of the news article.
72, is that like just the portions from the WTOC broadcast stitched together to show only the defendant talking?
Yes.
Like not the anchors and reporters and so forth?
Yes.
At this point, Your Honor, I introduce State's Exhibit 72. No objection.
Watch Billy Joe, her mama's face. She knows.
Now, what are we going to hear the defendant say in this video? To the extent you remember.
That she didn't know where Quentin was and hoped he would be found, but if she had had anything to take responsibility for, that she would.
And with that, I'll publish it, Your Honor.
My kids woke up to me screaming, "Where's Quentin?" They're running through the house.
Watch her.
Everywhere, inside, outside, so screaming for help. I've been here every day since.
Look at that.
I am not running and I'm not hiding.
She's
and if
mad.
something
She
does
knows.
come up that I am at fault, I will take myself to that police station. And I will walk with her. All we want is justice for Quentin Simon. That's it. We want justice.
She is mad. She could tell that she was lying, but she's still going to protect her child.
Whatever cost it is. We don't care the cost. We want answers just like everybody else does. At the end of it all,
Right?
we love you, baby
Exactly.
kid. My little Bucky, and we want to pull.
So that was an interview that's filmed and aired on October 24th, right?
Yes.
Had you been in contact with her via telephone during the investigation?
With both Leilani and Billy, yes.
Can you tell us how you came to be in phone contact with the defendant?
On one of the days the team was at the residence, I walked out to give a backpack to her brother because it had medication in it. And during that conversation, the defendant offered me her phone number.
So from that point forward, you're able to call and text with her, I guess?
Yes.
Okay. This same day, October 24th, that she does this interview where she says, "We don't know what happened. We just want answers and justice. And if he's alive, we want." Did she send you a text message saying something different from that?
She did.
Do you see in front of you a document marked as State's Exhibit 73?
I do.
Can you tell us, is that a portion of your text message traffic with the defendant?
It is.
All right. Does it fairly and accurately depict at least this portion of the messages that the two of you exchanged?
It does.
Your Honor, I would introduce this as State 73.
I agree, allegedly, in my opinion. Overprotected.
No objection, Judge.
Exhibit 73 is admitted without objection.
All right. On the first page, you with me?
I am.
Okay. Do you see that last entry at the bottom?
I do.
Is this an incoming text that you received from the defendant or an outgoing text that you sent?
It is an incoming text that I received.
And what is the date and time of this text?
October 24th, 2022 at 5:45 p.m.
So that would have been right about the time that this interview was airing on the evening news, I guess.
Probably, yes.
Okay. What did she message you at that time?
Do you want me to read it?
Yes.
I'm not lying for Danny anymore. The reason why my story about Oragel and shit didn't make sense was because Danny told me to say that. He was the one who left, and my phone was in the car from my previous trip, and his was on the charger. I was already smoking a blunt on the porch, and when I got done, Danny was already laying in bed. All the lights were off, and I glanced at the kids as I was getting in the bed to go to sleep. That is why he took off. I'm innocent of this. He was the last one to see Quentin. He is that texted the babysitter, and he was that wasn't in bed when I woke for just a moment, and it was still dark, and he was the one who the only set of keys to my car the morning of my son's disappearance.
Now, did you later bring her in for an interview to memorialize that statement?
I did.
Oral interview? And when was that conducted?
October 31st.
Where was it conducted?
At the FBI office.
What was your approach in this interview?
We really just wanted to it was a new story, and so we wanted to make sure that we had correctly captured what she was presenting to us. So we asked her to talk about what she had provided in the text and to just give the context and the complete story of that.
And did she essentially repeat to you what she had said in the text message?
More or less over the course of longer.
Okay. During this interview, we've seen some interviews to this point where she's sort of being challenged on things and has a certain reaction to that. During this interview, were you challenging her or pushing back, or were you more just letting her talk?
No, the goal was to just let her talk and get her whole story.
And what was her demeanor like in this interview?
She was affable. We were laughing, the three of us, Detective Lemons and I and Leilani. She was open, calm.
Now, did you, on this same day that interview was conducted, did you all collect DNA samples from the defendant and her mother?
We did.
Can you tell me about the process for doing that?
So there was no stranger or man that did anything in this.
Usually we let them do it themselves when they're consenting. Basically, you have a giant Q-tip and you scrape the inside
Just to
of
let you know.
the cheek to get some cheek cells, and you place it in a plastic baggie and seal it up in front of everybody.
All right, and is it marked with the name of the person who it came from?
It is.
Did you log those into evidence with the Savannah FBI office?
I did.
One item for the defendant's DNA sample and one for her mother's?
That's correct.
All right, were you involved in having those sent to the FBI lab at Quantico at some point?
Yes, I directed them to be FedExed to the lab.
And did that happen?
It did.
Okay. When did that happen in relation to November 18, the day that the remains were discovered?
We sent the DNA up on or around November 1st, just so it would be ready for the lab.
Okay. Now, we've talked a little bit about the phone monitoring operation. And I think you said you were the one who was doing that on a day-to-day basis.
Yes.
Do you see in front of you a disc marked as State's Exhibit 74?
I do.
Okay. Do you know what that disc is?
These are select recordings from Danny's wire.
Did they fairly and accurately capture a couple of the conversations that they had during this investigation?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would introduce this as State 72.
Objection.
Pardon, 74.
74.
And I would ask to publish just the portions of this. There are two files on this disk. The first one is a call with the date 10/30/2022 in the subject line. When would that call have been made?
This would have been the night before. That Halloween interview would have been made on October 30th.
And I'm going to open that file up and play starting at 9:50.
I've been getting up every day, 7 or 8 in the morning. It's what happens, I guess, with sober in the morning. You'll wake up early.
So as far as I know, this is the wiretap now that we're listening to.
I go to bed at a decent time. I get up in the morning and make breakfast for everybody and clean the house. And I'm a completely different person. I didn't notice.
I'm sorry, this is the interview from the 30th.
The house and clean. I do dishes.
Yeah, it's been a
while since you've done that.
Yeah, no, I know. I actually cooked dinner. I do the things you deserve for me to do. I'm sorry. I will never touch cook or cooking a memory. I become angry and impulsive when I'm on it.
This is the wiretap. I'm sorry. She just said, I get angry and impulsive when I'm on it, talking about the drugs.
I stopped the playback at 11:05. What was it we heard her say there about the effect of cocaine on her?
That it makes her angry and impulsive.
The next file on this disk has the date 10/31/2022 in the file name. When would that call have been made?
The evening of October 31st, 2022.
Is that the same day of the interview in which she was putting it on Danny?
It is.
Right,
I'm gonna play here from 27:02 on. We'll go with 27:03.
So what did you do when you went out after I fell asleep?
I was waiting for my got my word on.
All right, what was that exchange there that we heard?
Danny asked Leilani again what she had done after he had gone to sleep the night that Quentin disappeared. And she said that she had done a line and went out to get the Oradel.
Now, did that conflict in any way with what she had just told you in the October 31st interview?
It did.
In what manner?
She said that she didn't go get Oradel and during the interview, and that Danny had been the one driving the car.
Now, at some point, you were at the residence on October 5th at some point, right?
I was.
It was the pack and play that Quentin was said to have been sleeping in, and the pillowcase in the pack and play. Was that taken into evidence?
That day it was, yes.
What agency initially took it into evidence?
The Chatham County Police Department.
And was the pillow and pillowcase at some point turned over to you from the Chatham County Police Department?
It was.
I'm so lucky to have all you
Detective Lemons.
wonderful moderators and family members. Thank you guys.
Prepared it to be FedExed to the lab for analysis.
In Quantico?
The FBI lab, yes, in Quantico.
And did that happen? Was it FedEx to the lab?
It was.
Okay. Now I'd like to ask you about November 18.
Okay.
Were you involved in the coordination and supervision of the landfill search throughout?
Yes, I staffed all of the volunteers from Savannah and Brunswick. And as I mentioned earlier, I was present at least twice a day. If I didn't have administrative or investigative work on a given day, I was dressed out searching.
Now, we've heard some testimony to this point that suspected human remains were found there that day after some period of unsuccessful searching. Were you there at the outset of that discovery that day?
I was at the United States Attorney's Office facilitating an interview, and Brad called me and said that a skull had been found. And I immediately left the meeting at the U.S. Attorney's Office and quickly got to the landfill and was there for the rest of the day and the additional findings.
Something bad's coming up.
Can you just
want to let y'all know
when you got there? What was the scene like at the landfill?
Somber, but everyone was looking very, very carefully. We knew we were looking for small pieces of a small child. And fortunately, the skull
Lord, ever protected that
more recognizable. And so we knew we had believed that if we found one piece, all other pieces that we would find would be within 6 feet of the trash as it was compacted. So we knew that that was our day when we found him at the beginning of the day. And so we were, as you can imagine, there are a lot of bones in a landfill. And so we had to sort through chicken wings and T-bones and all of that to find what appeared to be human and separate those out. And that was throughout the day.
What do you remember about the period of time that passed from the first apparent item, from the first apparent item of human remains being found and you getting that call from Brad to when you'll kind of stopped identifying suspected human remains that day? How long did that process of discovery take?
It took, I would estimate, around 5 to 6 hours. We finished the search from where the skull had been found laid out more trash and searched that and broke for lunch. That search section had been pushed over during lunch, but then we realized that there were more likely bones within it that appeared to be human. And so I asked them to pull the deck back, meaning the trash they pushed aside that we'd been through, they were able to pull it back with the bulldozer, and we researched that. And so after that, we did one more deck, maybe two, without finding anything, and that was the end of the day.
What do you mean by one more deck? Maybe two? What is that?
So the landfill had laid
cool.
out a large open space that was flat. And we knew the pretty specific area where we expected to find Quentin, but trash as far as Statesboro was coming to our landfill. And so you imagine it compacted very quickly. So we had to dig through the compacted trash, pull out a reasonable amount to search at a time in a safe place. We had safety officers out because there's a lot that can cut you. We didn't have an issue with noxious fumes, but that was also a concern. So we pull that out. The safety officers would look through the deck and make sure that the search team was cleared to go forward. And then we had these rakes, and you would rake through every little piece and open trash bags that were still open and work your way until you had discarded all of the trash behind you, and the group kind of converged in a circle and turned in the bones that we had collected or the items of interest that we weren't quite sure, just needed someone else to look at. Most of us carried a bag on taped to ourselves so we could just drop the bones in and keep going when there was something like a skull, or on this day, a swath of skin or pieces that needed immediate attention. We would call someone forward. Since I was not a searcher that day, I would go onto the deck to get pieces to bring back to the evidence tent.
How far apart on the search deck were pieces of Quentin found from one another?
That's kind of hard to describe because he was strewn because he'd been strewn when he was compacted into his place of rest at the time. And then the bulldozer dug up chunks and laid out the deck, and then we spread them out. And so he was found across 2 or 3 decks, and the decks were, half a football field. So many searchers found different pieces of him, yes.
So if you do the math, 3 different decks, each of which is maybe a half of a football field, we're talking about like 1.5 football field area over which pieces of Quentin were found.
Once he was spread out, or once the decks were spread out, yes.
Do you see in front of you a binder marked?
I'm here, y'all. I'm just having a hard time with this.
You see in front of you a binder?
I do.
Is it marked as a state's exhibit?
It is. It's marked as
a number.
77.
Okay. Could you take a look through that and tell me if you recognize it? What's in there?
I do.
What are you looking at there?
I'm looking at evidence photos of human remains.
And are those the pieces of Quentin that you were talking about being found that day?
They are.
Okay. Where were these photographed before they were transported to the lab at Quantico?
They were.
And do these photographs fairly and accurately depict the suspected remains of Quentin Simon as you viewed them that day?
They do.
Your Honor, I would introduce this as State's Exhibit 77.
Subject to the publishing and, I guess, rules we talked about earlier, Judge, no objection.
Thank you, yeah, 77 years admitted.
I'd like to publish just a few. First of all, there's like 60-some pictures in there, right? I'd like to publish just a few of them and ask you a couple questions about them, okay?
Okay.
Can you flip to the first page in that binder?
Yes.
Is this it up on the screen here?
It is.
What does that appear to you to be, and what did it appear to you to be that day?
It is the top half of a skull.
Can you flip to the second image in this binder?
Yes.
Oh, you stop it.
What does this appear to you to be, and what did it appear to you to be that day?
When we found this and brought it to the tent, we weren't sure when we saw it from here. What I know now and can see is it is a severed foot, cut from the ankle, looking from the inside of the ankle down.
Can you see the
trigger warning?
The ankle bones in this image, just to orient?
Yes, to orient, this is the ankle bone where it was cut, and then you see almost a left toenail, and you can start seeing the shape of the foot from there.
Nothing. She
Turn it to the
tried
next page in the binder.
to make it look like she's gonna cry.
Yes.
What is this?
That is the same foot flipped over, so you can clearly see the skin of the foot. This is his heel, and then you shape down to the tips of the toe bones through the 5. We had a huge poster of Quentin after bath time, dressed and barefooted, on the top of the landfill to remember what we were looking for. And so we had been looking at his foot and his forehead for 5 weeks, and that is what we found. That is his foot.
And finally, the fourth image in the binder.
Yes.
What do you believe this to be?
I believe that it is a swath of skin going from the length of a body, of a toddler's body. So the shoulders come through the back and then down one leg. This was a piece that Officer Zerke passed to Kim Johnson, who passed to me as we carried out with tongs, because at the time it was hard to recognize, but we knew it stood out from everything else we had seen in the landfill.
Now, I'd like to ask you some questions about getting Quentin up to the FBI lab in Quantico. Okay? We've heard testimony from Special Agent Taylor Burns that he was responsible for initially transporting Quentin's remains from the landfill that day to the FBI office in Savannah. Does that align with your recollection?
Yes, we all met him at the office afterwards.
And he's described the packaging of Quentin in 4 different bags and placed him inside of a box.
Yes.
Were you involved in the further transport of Quentin to the FBI lab?
I was.
Can you tell us about that?
Starting from the beginning of the day, or just the logistics?
What happened from who took them from the FBI lab in Savannah to anywhere else?
So we arranged for private transport for Quentin. No one felt comfortable FedExing him or putting him on any other way. So I wrapped the box and drove him to Macon, where I met another agent who is on our fly team. And I handed Quentin to Agent Keys, who took him to Atlanta and kept him secure until the next day, where he flew him on an FBI aircraft to meet the lab in Virginia.
Is that how Quentin got to the FBI lab at Quantico?
It is.
Do you see in front of you 2 pictures taken together in Martha States Exhibit? I think it should be 93, is that right?
92.
92. Okay. Do you recognize those images?
I do.
What are those images show?
That is how I wrapped Quentin's box to transport him. And so the first image was what I could offer to the family when I gave a second death notification. And the second image is how he rode with me in our truck.
Do these images fairly and accurately depict the events that you've been talking about?
Yes, I took the second picture myself.
I'd offer this in a States Exhibit 92, Your Honor.
Without objection.
Yep, I was just thinking the same thing, Tracy.
Published the first
This is
image
hard to
you
listen to.
described
That's
as
why I've been so
overseeing.
quiet.
We had
I'm glad they did that.
Scott Schumann and Jeff Allen were at the office with me for me to retrieve Quentin and to borrow Scott's work truck to drive him.
There he is.
Three of us had just a quiet time wrapping him appropriately. And we thought this would.
It was, so he was something around that time. I'm not real good with dates. I think it was October 25th. And then he was found November 19th.
Be a nice image to be able to give. It's what I gave to Leilani and Billy Joe when I told them we had found
November
him in the
18th.
landfill.
Excuse me. Thank you, Abellis.
But he is in that box. He's in the bags in the box, and we wrapped it in a black cloth.
And that's
and then the flag.
Moving on to the second image.
That is Quentin in my back seat. How he rode with me on the way to Macon.
They cared for this baby more than his own mama did. Wrapped him up like a little soldier.
What was the date that Quentin made it to the lab in Quantico? Do you remember?
On or around November 21st.
We talked a little bit earlier about the defendant telling you via text message on October 24, and then in an interview on October 31, that she actually hadn't driven to Azalea and had been dating with her phone or something like that. Do you remember talking about that?
I do.
Did she eventually admit to you that wasn't true?
Yes. That about Danny.
Yeah.
Yes.
And was that on November 21st in her final interview?
Yes.
Okay. And did she tell you at that time that what she had said about Danny on October 24th and October 31 was just a theory that she was throwing out there?
That's correct.
One moment, please.
You see how much longer we got? Because I do got to get into the other stuff. I do want to see the defense question her. So we'll see the defense, what they say. And then
The Mickey Mouse picture you showed us.
I had not spoken to Miss Simon yet when I found the Mickey Mouse toy. I knew it from other investigators that she had stated that she had been missing with his favorite Mickey Mouse toy. So the first Mickey Mouse toy and the only
very
Mickey
beginning.
Anything
That was
else that
hard.
we need to take up before we start again?
There you are.
Thank you.
There you are.
Mr. Hilliard, are you ready to proceed?
I am.
And the state's ready?
Yes.
Okay. Please bring in the jurors.
Jurors in somewhere?
Cool, then where?
On the job.
On the job? Okay. And you say on the job, I'm going to assume you mean.
All right, we had gotten the idea of what happened. I couldn't deal with much more of that. So we're going to see what the defense says against her, and then we'll jump into Sarah Boone.
The academy, right?
And throughout the job, on the job training or various trainings throughout. I've been with the Bureau for 14 years. So the behavioral analysis unit will give short trainings, lunch and learns, things like that, as well as consults on various cases that I worked on.
Yeah. But you're not in the behavioral analysis unit, are you?
I'm not.
Okay. I didn't think so. That kind of threw me for a loop. So let me ask a question. With kind of the first thing you talked about. You're talking about Exhibit 10, Image 109. I'm familiar with the conversation that you're talking about as a Mickey Mouse toy. You said that had been there for a minute, correct?
I said it appeared that it had been there a minute.
So, I mean, it did have dust and cobwebs and stuff like that on it, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you also then immediately after that referenced the conversation you had with Miss Simon. But I remember that conversation. I don't remember her saying that it was a racing Mickey Mouse toy. And I don't remember her saying it was his favorite toy either. So what was the relevance of the Mickey Mouse picture you showed us?
I had not spoken to Miss Simon yet when I found the Mickey Mouse toy. I knew it from other investigators that she had stated that she had been missing with his favorite Mickey Mouse toy. So the first Mickey Mouse toy and the only Mickey Mouse toy that I saw, I noted.
Right, but that wasn't what she said. That was what you embellished, correct?
Objection, argumentative. My badgering as well.
Okay. He does have her on cross-examination. Mr. Hilliard.
I'll rephrase it and break it down if it'll make it better. So your testimony was that was his favorite toy, and it was a racing Mickey Mouse toy. But that wasn't what she stated. That was what you stated, correct?
I didn't state that that toy in the image was his favorite toy. I
Okay.
stated that she said he was missing with his favorite toy, which was a Mickey Mouse toy.
Well, then that begs the question then, because what was the relevance of that picture then? That wasn't his favorite Mickey Mouse toy, and it wasn't a racing Mickey Mouse, and that toy had been there in the garage for a minute. What was the relevance of that picture? None. I'll move on. Thank you.
Objection. The witness should be permitted to answer.
Thank you. Please stay.
On October 5th, we had known this family and the circumstances for only a matter of hours. So every single detail that was presented to us, we pursued and we followed and we looked to give context to. So if we were told that a favorite toy was a Mickey Mouse toy, we looked for a Mickey Mouse toy to see if there was any truth to the statement. And I was able to provide that image to various people in Quentin's family to see if they recognized that toy or any other Mickey Mouse toy as one that Quentin preferred.
Okay. Did you do that?
Yes.
Okay. Did anyone say that was his favorite toy?
They said no Mickey Mouse toy was his favorite toy.
Correct. Okay. So, as a matter of fact, you stated that that had been there, well, it had been there for quite a while, right?
Yes.
Okay. So not the first time we've heard about this Mickey Mouse toy. Okay. So my point is on October 5th, when this whole thing started, okay, you didn't know the relevance or importance of a Mickey Mouse toy, correct?
I did when I had that photo taken. The relevance was that he was reported missing with his favorite toy. There were hundreds of toys in that house.
See, my thought process when I saw that picture, I was like, well, I mean, it's obvious that that's not his favorite toy because it's got cobwebs all over it. Like if a child likes Mickey Mouse, of course, they're going to have several Mickey Mouse dolls. So I was wondering the relevance of it too. So I can kind of understand what he's doing here. But at the same time, you also got to understand why they're taking pictures, because if they're hearing that he liked Mickey Mouse, then they're going to take a picture of every Mickey Mouse thing that they see, because that's part of working the case.
And that is the only Mickey Mouse toy that stood out.
I would say there were probably 1,000 toys.
That's fair.
And I think that's a fair assessment.
I agree.
Okay. But my point is that was 2 years ago. Here we are 2 years later. Okay. And you've had a chance to review all that. So my point is while on October 5th of 2022, that may have seemed relevant to you or important to you, and I can understand that. Here we are 2 years later, and
exactly,
you know there's of no importance, and yet you still harp on that. Why is that?
Yep, overprotected, Jenny, Abellis, all of you, exactly.
I will move forward then. You also talked about the appropriate level of emotionality. Okay. What is the appropriate level of emotionality? Who trained you as to what the appropriate level is?
I didn't state appropriate. I cannot judge appropriate. I can only state what I observe.
But that's not true. You have judged appropriate, and you stated it several times on direct from Ms. Gerdine, did you not?
Did I say appropriate?
Well, the appropriate level of emotionality. You said that I'm trying to look at her, the exact words was overly emotional, I guess, or not showing enough emotion. That seems to be the two things we're getting with her. So with regard to Ms. Simon, she either shows too much emotion or she shows not the appropriate level of emotion. What's the appropriate level of emotion?
When I use those comparisons, it's within the bell curve of my observations across other people in similar circumstances, other people at different baselines that I've observed. And she was generally at one extreme or the other of my experience in dealing with people.
Okay. And let's talk about your first time meeting Ms. Simon was October 5th, correct?
Yes.
You had never met her before that day, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You didn't know her before that day, correct?
Correct.
And you drew your conclusions based on that day, correct?
No.
Really? So you didn't decide that she wasn't being truthful or she wasn't showing the appropriate emotion on October 5th of 2022?
I didn't speak to her about anything substantive on October 5th.
Okay. Well, let me ask you this.
I always forget to drop the link. If anybody wants to come up, here's the link.
I didn't speak to her on either of those days.
October 12th.
I did.
Just in case
You made one by then,
I want
correct?
to.
And that
I
was
just
1
want to
week
leave
later.
it out here.
Yes.
Okay. Had you spoken to her between October 5th and October 12th?
Yes.
On the phone, in person?
Both, or definitely in person and text. Sometimes when I would talk to her mom on the phone, she would be there, but not directly on the phone.
So again, it comes back to having had a week's worth of it. What would be the appropriate level of emotion to satisfy you at that point in time on October 12th?
There's no answer to that.
Exactly. So you spoke to Mr. Youngkin, correct?
Yes.
And same question for him. You never met him on October 5th, had you?
Correct.
And you didn't know anything about him on October 5th, did you?
Correct.
Okay. But you came to the conclusion that he showed the appropriate emotional level, correct?
I didn't say appropriate.
Okay. Well, then what did you say then?
I said he was exhausted and forthcoming, but minimized certain items. I believe that was my testimony.
And I believe you did speak with him on October 5th, correct?
5th, yes.
And he was angry and tired and upset as the interview wore on, was he not?
He was frustrated at the 11 p.m.
Well, in your mind, is frustrated the same thing as angry?
No.
What's the difference?
Frustrated can be exasperation towards a specific situation, but not directed towards a person.
Okay. So what's your definition of angry then?
Negative emotion towards a person.
So angry means towards a person and frustrated means towards a situation.
They're not the same emotion.
Okay. So can you be angry without being frustrated?
Yes.
Can you be frustrated without being angry?
Yes.
Can you be frustrated or angry without being violent?
Yes.
So it is possible then.
Yes.
Okay. Now, you also talked to Mr. Dean about a tattoo. Is it uncommon for parents to get tattoos of their children?
No.
So there's nothing unusual about that. Parents do it all the time, correct?
Correct.
And this was a statement that was made, was it on October 12th?
On the 5th and the 12th.
5th and the 12th. And was it made on video, audio? Where was it made?
The 12th was made on video and audio.
So on the 12th, she talked about the tattoo on video?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Not outside smoking.
That was on the 5th.
Okay. And do you ever recall Danny ever saying, I'm assuming since you were in charge of the hotel audio and video, you've watched most, if not all of that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you ever recall Danny saying, I'm just trying to save my own ass in one of their arguments?
I don't remember that verbatim, but yes, he would have said something to that effect. Yes.
Right. Okay. And was it really his idea, or was it just part of the natural suggestion in the conversation you had with him? You were already going that way anyway in the conversation, weren't you?
The hotel had already been addressed as far as just giving them a place away from the hubbub of the house. But he did jump ahead of what we were talking about to ask if we were going to wire it up.
Well, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it's not like you weren't already suggesting in that direction to begin with, were you? He kind of already knew what was coming.
I don't know what he knew at the time he addressed that.
Okay. Well, who offered to?
Good answer. Good answer.
I believe our victim services offered that.
So you offered to Lonnie to put him up in a hotel, or you offered to Danny to put him up in a hotel?
I don't know. I wasn't part of that conversation.
But it was offered.
It was offered.
And they accepted, or Danny accepted?
I don't know who accepted.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. You had mentioned something to Mr. Dean on direct examination a minute ago. You had said that you pretty much had told Imani on October 8th that you suspected that Quentin was dead. Is that a fair statement?
I had not. I didn't speak to Leilani on October 8th.
Well, I didn't say you did. I said you had intimated as early as October 8th that y'all suspected that Quentin was dead.
I said as early as October 5th, we suspected he was dead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I wrote it down on October 5th then. Okay. So
she's not having none of his bullshit.
Again, part of the interrogation techniques would be confronting people with your beliefs or your opinion or your ideas of the evidence, correct?
Yes.
And inconsistencies, which you've done, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So y'all pretty much stated that from October 5th forward that that's what you believed. And I'm seeing the videos ad nauseum. And that was what you and Agent Schneider and Detective Lemons and basically anyone who did any interviews with Miss Simon suggested to her, correct? That they believed that she had done something to her child or to come clean about it, correct?
For the most part.
That's so sweet.
So I'm a little curious because when Mr. Dean asked you a minute ago about her reaction sometime later when you said that you believe Quentin to be dead in the landfill.
Easter Bunny.
You made a big deal about her lack of emotion.
Today.
She's been facing questioning from y'all for quite a while, correct?
I agree.
In particular, that made a big deal. Which one is the question?
I'll break it down and do it one question at a time. So you questioned her many times. You made correct from October 5th on.
The team.
The whole team, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a bunch of questionings, a bunch of interviews, a bunch of statements made by you and the entire team that you all believe Quentin's dead somewhere, right?
I don't think we said dead until the 12th.
Okay. And she's the focus of it completely for this entire week, right?
She was the only one that had lied to us, and that is why.
Well, we'll get to that in a minute. But from October 5th to October 12th, that's what you're doing, right?
Yes.
And then a minute ago, when Mr. Dean asked you, you said that, oh, she didn't react surprised when we said it, that we believe Quentin was dead. Well, you've been questioning her for a week, right? Do you think the emotion may have worn off by then?
It hadn't worn off on the other 5 people I told that day.
Okay. And everyone's the same though, right?
If you're asking for a basis of comparison for why her reaction stood out in my mind versus the others, that is why.
Okay. And let's talk about that then. How often did you question, or your team questioned, Paul Simon? How many times in that same period of time?
He had been interviewed at least 3 times and had interacted with us on numerous occasions.
All right. So at least 3 interviews. How about Danny?
He had been interviewed at least 4 times, to my knowledge, and was in regular communication.
Okay. And he also helped you set up the wiretap in the hotel at the same time frame.
After his 3rd interview, yes.
Right.
Oh,
and how
I'm
many
sorry.
times did you talk to Ms.
I hate
Simon,
when
your
that
team,
happens.
in that same time frame?
Numerous times on the 5th. I'm not sure how many times that was. Once on the 8th, in person, non-substantive on the 10th, and then the 12th.
So again, a number of times, especially on the 5th, correct?
Yes.
So you don't think that any emotional shock may have worn off after all of that?
I have never seen a parent not be shocked when their child was dead.
Okay. Well, and let me ask you this.
Exactly.
You already made your mind up on October 5th. The team had at least, correct?
We had our suspicions. We had not made up our mind. We were pursuing all avenues.
Now,
The way she
we
looked
talked
at
about
him
the-
is like, fuck you,
You
buddy.
played this. I guess it's the phone conversation where she says cocaine makes her angry and impulsive.
Yes.
Okay. But angry and impulsive does not mean violent, does it?
We didn't suggest that.
Well, now, with regard to your involvement of taking the remains to the lab, you took it from here to Macon, then to Atlanta, and then by plane to Virginia, correct?
Was the path, yes. My leg was to Macon.
And you spoke with, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth here, but when was it you spoke with Danny Youngkin yourself?
About what?
Anything?
I spoke with him on October 5th and October 7th and October 8th and 9th. After that, he was no longer in Savannah, and I didn't see him in person for the rest of the investigation. And he mostly spoke with Brad over the phone. So I don't know the individual times I spoke with him over the phone with Brad.
All right. We'll just speak about what you know. When did Mr. Youngkin leave to go back to North Carolina?
On around October 9th.
So from October 5th to 9th, he was here, went back to Dunn, North Carolina, October 9th.
By way of Atlanta, I believe.
Okay. And you said you seized the pack and play and I guess the pillow or sheets or whatever it was that was in the pack and play?
I seized it from Chatham County, who had seized it from the house.
All right. And you forwarded it to
The
crime
FBI
lab?
lab.
Okay. And did you also listen to the wiretap?
I did.
Okay. Did you listen to all of the wiretap?
I did.
Okay. At any point in time on the wiretap, did Ms. Simon say that she had intentionally harmed her child?
No.
Did she ever say she stabbed, shot, strangled, did any of those things to that child?
No.
Okay. And how long was the wiretap in place, if you remember?
Until sometime after November 21st, within a couple of days, we would have taken it down.
So about 6 weeks, give or take.
Correct.
And same thing, you watched or listened to all the hotel audio and video. Same question. Did she ever say that she harmed her child?
There was question of the definition of the word harm.
Well, I'll break it down then for you.
I meant for her was why, as far as spanking, that kind of thing, versus the other items that you just listed.
Well, let's talk about strangling. Did she say she strangled her kid?
No.
Shot her kid? Stabbed her kid?
No.
Okay. And you've watched them all, and I'm not going to go through them all, but they were a lot of heated exchanges between her and Danny in that hotel room, were there not?
There were.
Okay. That's all the questions I got, Judge.
Can you redirect?
Well, no, please, Your Honor.
All right, let's see what else. If they're going to redirect. All right, there's a quick redirect. So we'll watch this and then yes, he does, Keisha. And then we'll jump into
I'd like to
Sarah
play
Boone.
for you a short video clip here and see whether you can tell us what this is. Okay. All right. First of all, looking at the first frame of this video, do you recognize the date, place, and event?
Yes, this is October 12th at the FBI office, interview of Ms. Simon.
This is a 36-second video clip from that interview, Your Honor. I have not marked this disc yet, but I will mark it as the next exhibit in sequence. And I will now offer this clip into evidence. This state's exhibit. What is it going to be? 93? 93.
Any objection?
I have to see it first.
Do you need an opportunity to see it?
36 seconds. I wasn't there, there's no objection.
All right, thank you. Exhibit 93 is admitted without objection.
I'll play that now.
Yep, I agree with both of you.
Can the court hear that as it's playing for the laptop?
You need to get a little louder though.
We'll peg the laptop speakers here. So
Yep, Trixie.
I'm not trying to prolong this. Here we go.
I've been thinking a lot about your tattoo though. Because what happens when you go down? Yeah, so this is what I'm going to do because all of this, I'm gonna take all this and just take over there and
She said, so this is what I want to do. The lady asked her about her tattoo, and she said, so this is what I want to do because of all this. And now she's describing what she wants to do to her tattoo pertaining to Quentin.
accomplice and some spires and trains and stuff. And some complaints in here. And so they're going to go over the conversation. And just wait for it. So they just think, well, what are you going to
I can't understand it. I'm trying.
Can you tell us more or less
Oh,
what
sorry.
you were saying there? It's a little difficult to make out.
She was describing the tattoo I brought up was the Hawaiian symbol I was talking about earlier, and then she was describing her intentions for a more elaborate tattoo for the future for Quentin.
And what was she saying? She
Right? I agree with y'all.
Maybe.
And water because he likes to swim.
Exactly.
And you're saying that's something that she had talked to you about as early as October 5th?
Yes.
And I think you noted that earlier, something that you found a little unusual, right?
Yes.
Did it sound to you like she was describing like an in memoriam tattoo?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
To rephrase your question.
Are you familiar with in memoriam tattoos?
I am.
People will get with like a date of death and date of birth and so forth.
Yes.
Did it sound to you like that's the sort of tattoo that she was describing?
Yes.
Calls for speculation, Judge.
You're the person not allowed.
So I'll just ask the question again for clarity of the record. Did it sound to you like that is the sort of tattoo that she was describing?
Yes, because the other two children weren't mentioned in that conversation.
Bam. Ba-ding.
Any recross? Okay. And is there any reason not to excuse this witness?
Yeah. No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you.
All right, I think that's it for
You are excused, ma'am.
yesterday.
Thank you.
Let me make sure nobody popped up at the end. Nope, that's it. All right, let's check Sarah Boone from yesterday. And then we'll watch about this ballerina and the motions that were put in yesterday. Let me do it like this. Like this, like that, and like this. And sorry, I should stop singing and chase everybody out. Oh, this one's live. Hold on. Hold on just a minute.
I'm Brian Kahn, and I'm running for State House to lower costs and fund our schools. Frank Sossman, he's voted with his party 97% of the time to ban abortion and cut school funding. We can do better. When you send me to Raleigh,
Like, why?
we will.
Thanks for that, but I really didn't want to know about all that. Hold on a minute, y'all. No, I can't sing. I used to could sing. I used to be in chorus. That was before I went down the wrong path in life, started smoking cigarettes and things. Okay, let's try it like this. Hold on a minute, y'all, and I'll share my screen. I'm using one hand to type. Now let me share my screen. Hold on just a minute. Share screen. Yes. Okie dokie. I want to find the one from yesterday and see who testified at Court TV. Can you give me the one from yesterday, please? Oh, Sarah Boone takes the stand today. I wonder if she's on the stand right now. Let's see.
Open the door to quick.
I love the older like 70s music and stuff like that. Led Zeppelin is my favorite band. Well, actually, Alice in Chains is my favorite band, but I love Led Zeppelin and Cream and all of them too. Yeah, it's stuck on 2, but like won't let me skip. Thank you so much. Let me take it back and see what was going on. Hold on, baby. I'm not muted. Give me just a second. It don't look like anybody's taking the stand right now. Okay, let's go back to yesterday. Oh, that was a witness. Okay. All right. No, I didn't want to watch it later. I wanted to watch it now.
That's that most likely his left side. However, I do say the caveat that some of the findings are dependent on time, meaning that, you know, if that suitcase had been moved or flipped over, that could be different than what I'm seeing at the time of my examination.
Tell us, what is skin slippage?
So after death, the body goes.
Okay, we'll listen to the medical examiner on this one, and then I'll see if there's anything else pertinent, but I didn't see much. I'm going to speed it up a little bit.
Yes.
Good morning, doctor. Could you please state and spell your name for the record for us?
Sarah Zadovich, SARAZYDOWICZ.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Can you tell us, what do you do for a living?
I'm a forensic pathologist.
And who do you work for?
I work for Orange County. We cover Orange County and Osceola County.
And how long have you been a forensic pathologist?
I've been at this office for about 12 years and then 1 year in Tampa, so about 13 years.
And what type of educational background do you have to be a forensic pathologist?
So I have a bachelor's degree in kinesiology from the University of Wisconsin in Madison. I went to medical school in Kansas City, Missouri. After that, I went background information. Sometimes I have none. It just depends on the particular case.
In this case, what information were you provided at the time?
So the information I had was that the decedent
this
was
trial's
with
crazy.
his girlfriend, and at some point in time in the night, he got into a suitcase, which was then zippered shut. At another point at time, I believe
No
she went
doubt,
to
E.
bed, and then the next morning discovered that he was still in the suitcase. And I think that was in about an 11-hour time frame from the information that I had.
You mentioned
Keister, it would not have surprised me to learn that she fired herself.
Asphyxia. Can you explain for us what asphyxia is?
Sure. So asphyxia is a very general term. It would be kind of like saying, I drive a car. Right? That's very generic. And we know that there are many different types of cars out there, right? So asphyxia simply means lack of oxygen or inadequate oxygen for an individual. And there are different categories of asphyxia. So you can have suffocation, which just means that there's obstruction of the airways. So that could be smothering, that could be somebody choking on a piece of food, or maybe just being in an environment where there's not enough oxygen.
Real quick, this is the Sarah Boone trial. She zipped her boyfriend up in a suitcase and just basically laughed as he was telling her he could not breathe, and he passed away.
In the air to sustain that individual. There's a category called strangulation. That would be compression of the neck, either blood vessels or airways. There's another category called mechanical asphyxia. That can be when the body is in an unusual or abnormal position where the actual mechanics of breathing can't occur. So that can be the position of the body, or it can be like, let's say if a heavy object fell on somebody and you simply can't breathe because of the weight of that object. That would be a mechanical asphyxia. And then there's drowning. That's a different type of asphyxia. And there are a couple of other categories as well that are much less common.
Is there a most common type of asphyxia?
The most common would be ligature compression of the neck. So that would be like an event, a hanging. That would be the most common that we would see.
You also mentioned environmental suffocation. Could you tell us a little bit more?
You got me
what that
dying,
means in
Keister.
layman's terms?
So that just means there's not enough oxygen in the environment that the person is in. You could think of somebody who's in an enclosed space where there's a fixed amount of oxygen. So as that oxygen is, as the person is breathing, they're using up all the oxygen. And once it's gone, there's no oxygen left. Or you could think of maybe people who are, climbing Mount Everest. There's not as much oxygen up there, and that's why they have oxygen tanks. So it just means that the amount of oxygen available in the air around that person is not enough to sustain them.
In this case, what can you tell us about how long George Torres was in that suitcase?
There's not a really good way for me to give you a time frame as to how long he was in that suitcase. Again, because there was both the component of positional asphyxia, being in an unusual position for a period of time, and then also the environmental suffocation component. Because within that suitcase, certainly there's going to be oxygen, but it's not going to be the same as if you were sitting in a room like this. And because there are those multiple components happening at the same time, there's not a really good way to estimate or say with scientific certainty, oh, he was in for X amount of time. There's really not a good way to do that.
How about, is there any good way to approximate or determine the time that George Torres died?
There's not a good way to do that either, again, because there are so many different components at play at the time of his death. Sitting in a normal room like this, the percentage of oxygen that's available is about 20 to 21%. If that were to drop to 10 to 15%, the person can be impaired with judgment.
That's true. Abella says counting herself, Sarah has had 10 lawyers, but you've got to also account for all the multiple personalities. So there's actually been probably about 172.
They can be impaired with activity. Once that percentage drops between 8 to 10%, most people will lose consciousness. And at a percentage of 8% oxygen or less, that's when we would expect the death to occur. And so again, there's not a really good way to measure the amount of oxygen that would have been available to him in that suitcase, in addition to the fact that he was in an unusual position.
What position were you able to determine he was in that suitcase?
I wasn't able to see what position he was in. By the time that our medical legal death investigators were at the scene, he was already removed from the suitcase. Based on some of the findings, I favor that he was most likely in like a fetal type position. So knees flexed, arms flexed, and the head most likely flexed forward. But again, that's from my findings. I didn't see what position he was in.
What side of his body would he be resting on in this fetal position?
That's that most likely his left side. However, I do say the caveat that some of the findings are dependent on time, meaning that, you know, if that suitcase had been moved or flipped over, that could be different than what I'm seeing at the time of my examination.
Tell us what.
And the suitcase would have had to have been moved to bring it to her. Keister, oh, Lord have mercy. I done went back. Hold on a minute and we'll get it back where it was. Keister said that you fat thumb everything, so it's like misspelled and stuff. I do the same thing, and I'll actually like post thumbnails and things, and
a Florida statute or a Florida law that states
spelled wrong, and like my thumb, because my phone is so small, my thumb is big, and it'll be spelled wrong. I was saying, I bet half the people that look at my videos think I'm drunk, and I don't even drink.
Again, because there are so many different components at play at the time of his death. You know, sitting in a normal room like this, the percentage of oxygen that's available is about 20 to 21%. If that were to drop to 10 to 15%, the person can be impaired with judgment. They can be impaired with activity. Once that percentage drops between 8 to 10%, most people will lose consciousness. And at a percentage of 8% oxygen or less, that's when we would expect the death to occur. And so again, there's not a really good way to measure the amount of oxygen that would have been available to him in that suitcase, in addition to the fact that he was in an unusual position.
What position were you able to determine he was in that suitcase?
I wasn't able to see what position he was in. By the time that our medical legal death investigators were at the scene, he was already removed from the suitcase. Based on some of the findings, I favor that he was most likely in like a fetal
Lord
type
have
position.
mercy, Abella.
So knees flexed, arms flexed, and the head most likely flexed forward. But again, that's from my findings. I didn't see what position he was in.
What side of his body would he be resting on in this fetal position?
That's that most likely his left side. However, I do say the caveat that some of the findings are dependent on time, meaning that, you know, if that suitcase had been moved or flipped over, that could be different than what I'm seeing at the time of my examination.
You know, that's going to be our family slogan. Spellings errors are us. So here at the Speculating Family, spelling errors are us.
Tell us, what is skin slippage?
So after death, the body goes through a series of progressive changes. And one of those changes is skin slippage. And what that does is it tells me that that person is a little bit further away from the actual time of death. So it's not something that's going to occur immediately after death for most people. It's something that would occur a little bit later on in that process of changes that happens after death.
And tell us, what is rigor mortis?
So rigor mortis is also called the postmortem stiffening of muscles. And again, that's one of the changes that occurs after death. Most of the times that will occur before we see skin slippage. But these changes are very variable from individual to individual. And it also depends a lot on the environment the person is in. So for example, those changes that we're going to see happen more quickly in a warm environment. Somebody who maybe is engaged in a physical or violent struggle, those changes are going to occur more rapidly. And then it also depends on the person themselves, you know, their relative size, their relative health. Those things can all impact the changes that we see after death.
How does skin slippage and rigor mortis inform your findings about how long George Torres was likely in that suitcase?
So again, you know, the time frame that I had was about 11 hours, just from the last time that he was known to be in the suitcase versus the time that he was found.
Yeah,
So
I'd
I'm basing it
say.
off of that. So about an 11-hour time period. Well, when I did my examination, the rigor
If somebody's resembling a light green piece of rubber with like a square pointed head and big, I think his eyes are red, and like 3 fingers. Yeah, we've gone way too far. Way too far.
rigor mortis was already dissipating or leaving. Also, there was some skin slippage. And so if he had not been in the suitcase, if he had been out of the suitcase, I would not expect that advanced amount of change. It's compatible with him being in that suitcase for a longer period of time. It would have been warmer. And also if he had been struggling to get himself out, engaging that physical activity, those are things that are going to accelerate or speed up that process. So my findings at the time of the examination are compatible with that 11-hour time period or, somewhere around there.
Additionally, did you note any injuries to the body of George Torres?
Yes.
These injuries that you noted to the body of George Torres, did you document them on what's called a body chart?
Yes, the diagram on a body chart, and we also take pictures as I'm going through my examination.
Hold on, let me show y'all real quick. Oh, wrong button, but we're going to go right back to it. I got it pulled up. If we're seeing this right here, if a human is looking like this right here, I'd say we've gone way too far. There's some major issues, to say the least. We done passed the point of no return. If somebody's looking like that, I'm just saying. All right, there we go.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness who's been previously marked for identification and shown to defense as states R?
You may.
It is sad. I'm sorry.
Ma'am, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification as states R. Do you recognize this document?
Yes.
And can you tell us, what is this document?
That's a copy of my body diagram.
Sorry.
Oh, it's a copy of my body diagram.
And does this fairly and accurately represent the diagram that you created in this case for George Torres?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to move what's previously been marked for identification as states R into evidence. No objection.
What was pre-marked as states R will be received into evidence without objection as states 12.
And Your Honor, request permission to publish.
Yes, sir.
So, ma'am, on this body chart, can you describe for us and point out what was the first blunt impact?
Trigger
injury
warning,
that you
everybody. Scrolling across the bottom.
So
Trigger
there were some blunt
warning.
impact injuries to his head. I don't think it's on this one, but there were some blunt impact injuries to his head right up here around the eye and on the mouth area.
And then, did you notate any injuries to his hand?
Yes, so there were some ecchymoses, or you can think of that as like a large kind of bruise on both hands.
What other blunt impact injuries did you identify?
So there's a series of ecchymoses on the left side of the back, right about here.
And any others?
There were some on the forearms as well.
And you use this body chart, you say, in addition to photographing the injuries that you document, correct?
Yes.
As part of your examination, I believe it's on the body chart itself, do you document the height and weight of the person as well?
Yes.
And what was the height of Mr. Torres?
So technically for us, it's length. Height is the measurement that's taken while someone is standing. So his length was 62 inches and his weight was 103 pounds.
In regards to these blunt impact injuries, how is it that you come to the conclusion that these injuries were the result of blunt impacts?
Back when I went to art.
Hold on just a minute.
So these are typical wounding patterns for blunt force trauma. And when I say blunt force trauma, that can mean something striking a part of the body, or on the other hand, it can be the body striking an object. And that causes injury to the skin, to the soft tissue, and sometimes the deeper tissues, depending on how severe or how strong that blunt force trauma is.
Are these injuries consistent with a person being struck with a baseball bat?
They could be, yes.
Are they consistent with a person being pushed down a flight of stairs?
They could be, yes.
Can you say whether or not these injuries occurred while George Torres was in the suitcase?
No.
Why is it that you cannot say that?
So all of these injuries seem to have occurred around the same time, meaning that they're relatively acute or new. They're not things that are healing or something that happened last week. So they all occurred around the same time. But you can't really look at a bruise or a contusion and say, oh, that happened 2 hours ago. There's not a good way to do that.
Are these injuries consistent with them occurring while he was inside the suitcase?
Yes, they could be.
As part of your examination, do you also check the toxicology of George Torres?
Yes.
And is that something that's pretty standard in any autopsy?
Yes.
And what were the toxicology results for George Torres?
So there was a blood alcohol level of 0.139 milligrams per deciliter, and there was also caffeine and nicotine detected as well.
That level of alcohol, is that over the legal limit in the state of Florida to drive?
Sure. So for driving under the influence, that's a 0.08. So that is higher than that.
What does that alcohol level at the time of your autopsy tell you about George Torres's level of impairment 11 hours earlier?
So I don't necessarily know that it was 11 hours earlier, but it was at the time of death, at or near the time of his death. That's what the blood alcohol level was. So at that level, everyone reacts a little bit differently to alcohol. And some of it has to do with whether or not somebody is accustomed to drinking alcohol or if they've never had alcohol. So you can develop tolerance. But at that level, there's going to be impairment of judgment. There can be impairment of motor skills. There can be slurring of words. Something that's called disinhibition or lack of inhibition. And again, it's really variable from person to person, but those are the common things that you would see at that level.
Would that level of alcohol impair the ability to problem solve?
It can, yes.
You also stated earlier that you document your autopsy findings also photographically, correct?
Yes.
I don't know if it's going to show pictures, so I do want to give a trigger warning. And yeah, Keister Bunny brings up a good point. He was tiny. It wouldn't take much to get him that drunk. Now, yeah, it varies by like your weight. If you weigh more, if you're taller, if you weigh more, it's going to take more to get you drunk because it's blood alcohol per volume, or like what's in your bloodstream. Okay. So if you're taller and bigger, you've got more blood. So therefore the amount of blood alcohol that's in your blood, there's going to take more alcohol to be in your bloodstream and get in there like to a significant level than it would for someone who was small and didn't weigh very much. Obviously, they've got less blood in their body, so the more alcohol they drink, like it wouldn't take as much alcohol to get the same amount of alcohol by volume per your blood as it would somebody that's heavier. But like somebody that's me, I'm not real skinny, but I'm not real big either. But I don't drink. So if I was to go drink one glass of wine, I would be feeling pretty good. But somebody who drinks daily, that was my size. It might take them 4 or 5 to feel the same effects that I would after one glass, excuse me. So taking all that into account and the fact that they drink every day, it's really kind of up in the air, Like, yeah, he was smaller, but he drank every day. So we don't really know exactly how drunk he was. But I imagine pretty plastered. Because it was like 3 liters of wine that they drank.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness who's been marked for identification as States Q and been shown to defense?
May.
Ma'am, I'm showing you what's been marked for identification as States Q. Could you take a look at this composite of photographs to yourself and then look up once you're finished? Ma'am, do you recognize these photographs?
Yes.
Are these photographs a portion of the photographs that you took in your autopsy of George Torres in this case?
Yes.
Do they fairly and accurately represent how he appeared and how his injuries appeared to you at the time you performed your autopsy?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to move what's previously been marked for identification as States Q into evidence.
No objection. What was pre-marked as States Q will be received into evidence without objection as States 13.
Your Honor, request permission to publish.
You may do so.
Ma'am, I'm showing you photo 1 from
Right.
States Composite.
Keister, Annabelle's. That's crazy. That's crazy, Abellas. And right, Keister?
So this is an identification photo that's basically just showing from about the level of the collarbones up.
And this is George Torres.
Yes.
Did you note any signs of injury in this photo?
So there's some ecchymoses around the left eye. This picture, it's a little bit hard to see, but I think there's another one coming up. There's also an area of ecchymoses up here on the left side of the forehead with also some swelling associated with that. The lips have some contusions and small lacerations. And then on the left shoulder here, you can see a little bit of some ecchymoses here, or again, ecchymoses are kind of like big bruises.
Turning to photo 2 from States Composite. What are we looking at in this photograph?
So this is his right arm near the elbow. And right here, you can see this kind of darker area. So this looks similar to an abrasion, but it's actually, it's what's called drying artifact. And again, this is one of the reasons that I think that he was in that suitcase for a little bit longer. Most likely that was a pressure point where part of that suitcase was resting on his elbow in that area. And then after death, that tissue dries out. And that's the discoloration that you're seeing there.
I was thinking the same thing, Abellas. Not 1 ounce of emotion.
Turning to States 3 from the composite.
So here you can see a little bit better. I don't know if you can get a feeling for this, but this area is what we call edema or swelling. So this whole area is edema. It's a little bit discolored, so ecchymoses. And then again, really at the corner of the eye here, you can see that darker discoloration. And so those are injuries from blunt force trauma.
He was.
States 4 from the composite.
So this is the left shoulder and arm. So again, you can see this kind of red to purple area. So this is all ecchymoses, and then a couple of linear abrasions or scratches.
States 5 from the composite.
This is the same area, just a little bit closer up. So you can see this whole area of ecchymoses. It's a little bit variegated, differential in color, but again, that's all blunt force trauma.
And what part of the body is this we're looking at?
This is the left shoulder.
She kicked him down the stairs. Yep. I think she threw that suitcase
States
down the
6
stairs.
from the
I
composite.
really do.
That's the same area, but in this picture, we have a scale or the ruler.
And why do we use scales and rulers?
That's just to give an idea of how big the area is or how large the injury is.
States 7 from the composite.
So this is the left forearm and hand. And you can see the area right here that's a little bit red to purple. And then also right here on the left hand, right here and here. Those are all areas of ecchymoses, again, blunt force trauma.
Lots of blunt force trauma.
States 8 from the composite.
Again, the left arm. Just from a little bit of a different angle, so you can see, and a little bit with the elbow too here, but you can see all these areas, ecchymoses.
Trigger warning.
States 9 from the composite.
And now looking at the left hand, a little bit closer up, so you can kind of see a little bit better these areas of ecchymoses.
States 10 from the composite.
And again, the left hand just closer up.
States 11 from the composite.
So now we're looking at the back, and you can see that there are these linear abrasions in the mid-back.
Are those scratch marks for?
They can be scratch marks. They could also be blunt impact, more of just a straight-on blunt impact, especially being in that suitcase if there are objects in there.
What is the discoloration that we see around his shoulders and some other spots on his back?
Sure. So you're talking about this area?
Yeah.
It's very possible.
So that's called livor mortis or lividity. And that's one of the changes that we see again after death. And basically what that is it's postmortem after death, settling of blood in the blood vessels. And so it's dependent on gravity and it's dependent on the person's position. So what I mean by that is we're seeing it on his back because after the time of death, at some point in time, he was more positioned on his back. And
hold on just a minute. Okay. Oh.
The areas that are lighter, that's because for a couple of reasons. It could be the position of the body, meaning that it's not in the gravity dependent position, or there could be something pressing on it. So either one of those.
Stage 12 from the composite.
So those are those linear abrasions just shown a little bit closer up.
Stage 13 from the composite.
And the same, but with a scale.
Stage 14 from the composite.
So now you're seeing the left side of his back and also the back of his left arm. And you can see these areas here of ecchymoses, and these are a lot darker than some of the others that we've seen. One of the things that I did is I looked underneath the skin in these areas because they're so much darker and so much more dense. So I wanted to see if there was injury of the deeper tissues. So these areas are associated with hemorrhage or bleeding into the skeletal muscle, so the deeper tissues. And so that's just indicating more force applied to that area.
And when you did your internal exam, did you examine this area and did that inform your findings?
Yes.
Stage 15 from the composite.
And that's showing those areas a little bit closer up. So you can see that they're much more dense. There's at least 3 distinct areas here. There could be more than 3 impacts, but there's at least 3 separate ones that can be seen.
Stage 16 from the composite.
This is just showing the upper back and the back of the neck. We've got a linear abrasion right here on the back of the neck, and these were the ones shown in the earlier pictures.
And stage 17 from the composite.
And this is just showing the same area of the back and the back of the arm, but just at a different angle.
So we've discussed and seen evidence of many different injuries. In total, how many blunt impact injuries did you identify?
I can't give you an exact number. Again, you can have multiple impacts in a very close area, so it can be hard to discern each one. They can overlay each other, or they can be so close to each other. But at least 5 to 6, most likely more than that.
And when you were going through your body chart as well, and I guess we also saw some of it photographically, you also mentioned impact to the left side of the head.
Yes.
And I believe that was subgaleal?
Subgaleal. So kind of similar to what I was describing on the back.
That's a
I
good
looked at the
point, Abella.
underside of the scalp. And so in those areas on the left side of his forehead where there was the edema, when we reflect or we fold the scalp over, there was hemorrhage or bleeding that went through the entire scalp and was deposited on the skull. There was no associated skull fracture and there was no bleeding inside of the skull, but it was all in the scalp and deposited on the outer surface of the skull.
So under the skin, but not
Like
under
he'd
the
been
skull.
hit with a bat, maybe?
Your Honor, I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you. Any cross-examination?
Yes. Doctor, good morning.
Good morning.
My name is James Owens, and I'm one of the lawyers that represents Sarah Bend here today. I've got 2 questions. Can we first talk about the toxicology?
Yes.
The alcohol. You said you've done approximately 3,000 autopsies, and of those autopsies, how many years would that have been?
12 years.
So when you first got down here from Tampa, I think you were up in the Northeast, came down here to Tampa, that's when you started?
Yes.
And you agree you've interpreted toxicology results in all or most of those cases?
Most, yes.
And you did order the blood alcohol test of the decedent in this case? And you said he was a 0.38?
No, 0.138.
0.138. And you also ordered the vitreous level
Yes.
of alcohol as well? And the result was a 0.213?
Yes.
And you would agree that's about 3 times the legal limit?
Close, yes.
Now, you would agree that at those levels, there are some pharmacologic effects from ethanol in the body?
Yes.
And I know you mentioned some, but you agree that that level of alcohol in the body would impair somebody's judgment?
For most people, yes.
And their decision-making abilities?
Yes.
And it would release inhibitions?
Yes.
And they would be more apt to take risk that they otherwise would not?
Yes.
And of course, it would impair motor skills and potentially loss of balance?
Yes.
It would also impair coordination?
Yes.
Hand-eye coordination as well as fine motor skills?
Yes.
It also impairs memory, alcohol does?
Yes.
So there are lots of effects that ethanol has on the body?
Yes.
Now, you're aware in this case that George Torres, the decedent, stepped into the suitcase under his own power in a game of hide and seek?
That's how it was reported to me, yes.
Do you have any evidence to dispute that?
No.
Can you tell us when Mr. Torres drank?
Well, then where did the bleeding that was on his scalp come from? Not in his skull. His brain wasn't bleeding, but there's a big blood contusion on his skull. Maybe from being hit by a baseball bat. I'm just speculating.
The last drink he had prior to getting in the suitcase?
That I can't tell you because, if somebody had been drinking either periodically throughout a time period or continually throughout a time period, that's difficult to say.
So he could have stopped drinking an hour before he got into the suitcase, or 5 minutes before he got into the suitcase, or 4 hours before he got into the suitcase?
Yes.
We just don't know.
Correct.
Do you have any idea at the time of the autopsy whether or not he was in the elimination phase?
So he was in the metabolic phase, yes.
The elimination phase is what I refer to it as. But...
Yes.
Okay. All right, now I want to talk about time of death determination. It's fair to say that you did not go to the scene that day that Mr. Torres was found.
No, a medical legal death investigator from our office went to the scene.
So there was an investigator with your agency named Ashley Hammermeister?
Yes.
That went to the scene?
Yes.
And she would have prepared a report?
Yes.
And you would have reviewed that report?
Yes.
Do you agree that fire and rescue assessed Mr. Torres at 1:07 p.m. on that date, February 24th of 2020?
Yes.
Does that sound about right based on your case file?
Yes.
And so this investigator that we mentioned, she did not arrive on scene till 6:27 p.m., so nearly 6 hours after the body was discovered, she arrived.
Yes.
And the body was laying supine, stretched out?
Yes.
In front of the suitcase?
Yes.
Now, you examined and assessed the body of Mr. Torres at the time of the autopsy?
Yes.
And you said that the body was ambient temperature?
Yes.
Is that the normal air temperature we're in today?
Whichever environment you're in, yes.
So the body was not stored in a cooler for 24 hours?
No, the body was stored in the cooler, but in the mornings when we get there, the bodies are brought out of the cooler.
Okay. How long had the body been out of the cooler before it was examined by you? Do you know?
Most likely an hour to an hour and a half.
Now, you said that the lividity was in the back, correct?
There's lividity in the back and also on the left side of the body as well.
And you agree the body is stored at the morgue on its back?
Correct.
Now, were you aware of the last time that Ms. Boone, my client, actually saw her boyfriend alive or observed him in the video, in the suitcase by video from her phone?
I think in the report it was around 12:30 or 1 in the morning, somewhere around there.
Have you looked at either one of those videos from her phone?
I briefly saw one that the detective showed me.
Do you know if that was the 2-minute video or the 22nd second video?
I believe it was the shorter one.
Okay. So would it be fair if I said the time last seen was around 11:30, would you dispute that or?
No.
Okay. So really, from the time.
Yeah, the
I guess
end
it
of
was
winter.
11:30 that
it's been
evening with the
cooped up too
videos,
long
and
or
then
something.
you understood that the body was found around 12 hours later the next day or so. Would you agree that the death occurred sometime within those two periods of time?
Yes.
We don't know exactly when that is. So
Yeah.
it would be a guess if we tried to speculate about that.
Yes.
Now, considering the 3,000 autopsies, how many cases have you ruled the cause of death as positional or postural asphyxia?
A handful of times. It's not very common.
So about 5 times or less?
Yes.
And we're going to talk about environmental suffocation in a little bit, but let's talk about this positional asphyxia component. What was your ruling in those 5 cases that you ruled that it was positional asphyxia? What was your ruling in terms of your diagnosis?
Your Honor, I'm going to object as to relevance.
Approach.
I'm going to skip ahead a little bit just while they approach because I got to get through this so we can talk about the ballerina.
And due to that insufficient oxygen that we breathe in the air, so you essentially run out of the oxygen in the space.
Yes.
So I guess years ago, how this sometimes would occur was a child would somehow get into an old refrigerator and it would be enclosed. So it was airtight and eventually you would run out of oxygen.
Yes.
You would agree with that?
Yes.
And I think you said the normal makeup of air has about 20% oxygen.
Yes.
So we had either a decrease in the oxygen levels or a low concentration of oxygen.
Yes. Yes. And also, keep in mind that while he's in there, every time he's exhaling, he's pushing out carbon dioxide. Okay. So again, whatever oxygen is there is most likely diminished because it is an enclosed space. It doesn't have to be no oxygen, but it's decreased from what we would have in a normal room. But every time that he's exhaling, there's more carbon dioxide that's in that space as well. So that displaces any oxygen that might be there too.
So what volume of air do we inhale and exhale in a normal breath?
Well, it depends. I mean, you can take a deep breath, you can take a shallow breath. It depends. And then there's also the rate at which people breathe. So that's variable.
So if it was average, would you say 500 milliliters on average?
Depends on the person.
Well, would you agree that at rest, you take a normal number of breaths per minute of 12 to 14?
That would be considered the normal range. Yes.
6 to 7 liters per minute?
Yes.
At rest? Do you know the volume of room air contained in that suitcase?
No.
Do you know how porous the fabric of that suitcase was?
No.
Did you run any tests on the suitcase?
No.
Were you aware that the suitcase, the lock on it or the zipper on it was broken? The pull handles were broken?
Yes, I did.
The porousness of the suitcase is gonna come into play. I knew it would.
Know that.
Do you agree if there is a portion of the zipper that's open, that air can travel in and out of that space?
Yes.
Do you know what the anticipated exchange of gases would be through that fabric?
No.
Do you know if, the suitcase was out in the rain and it rained, do you know whether or not rain or the liquid would pierce the interior?
I don't know.
So from what I gather, no studies were done on the suitcase.
Not that I'm aware of.
So we don't know that zipper being busted, what exchange of air could go in and out.
Correct.
Why wouldn't you have done studies on the suitcase though?
I think you said there are physiological effects once the value or percentage of oxygen is decreased from the norm.
Yes.
You said 8 to 10%, you become unconscious.
Yes.
And then a value of less than 8%, death occurs.
For most people. Yes.
Excuse me?
For most people.
And the normal oxygen saturation in adults and children is 95 to 100%.
Yes.
So if it decreases, the oxygen decreases less than 10%, someone would lose consciousness and die within less than 30 minutes.
So that's hard to give a time frame on that. Studies that have been done show that the oxygen content is anywhere from 4 to 6. Unconsciousness can occur in less than a minute, death within minutes. But those have been empirical studies.
So, and I know that's kind of, maybe you tell me, if that's kind of why you gave the 2 different diagnoses, the environmental and the positional. is because the environmental may have had an effect or the positional may have had an effect. You're not sure, so you listed them both?
It's not that I'm not sure. I think that both mechanisms were at play at the same time, and that's not unusual in deaths, as there can be multiple factors occurring at the same time.
But you don't know the percentages, 50% for one or 70% for one, 30 for the other. You don't know.
No.
But you would agree in concert, if these two causes, the positional as well as the environmental, if they were acting in concert, that would render a relatively short amount of survival time.
I can't say.
You just don't know.
No.
Now, we talked about these blunt force injuries, correct?
Yes.
It'd be fair to the jury to say that there were no broken bones.
There were no broken bones.
And it would be fair to say that the blunt force injuries on his body that the jury has seen here today did not contribute to the cause of his death.
Not likely.
And I think you didn't put that anywhere in your report. That it
No.
did not,
I included it in my report. I did not include it on the death certificate.
as the reason or cause, contributing cause of the death.
Correct.
Judge, can I put up a couple of those exhibits? Doctor, are you aware that there was a baseball bat that was gathered in evidence in this case?
I didn't hear about that until later.
When is later? When did you first learn about the potential for baseball?
That might have been around the time that I was sitting for a deposition, but I can't quite
When your
remember.
deposition was taken?
I don't have the file folder. I don't know when I was deposed.
I'm going to show you this exhibit. This is it's number 14. And this composite exhibit is state's exhibit, I believe, number 13. This is picture number 14. You see the, you said they were circular type injuries?
Yes.
And you've seen a regular baseball bat or a kid's baseball bat?
Yes.
Wooden bat. And if you were to swing that bat and hit somebody's body or hit a suitcase and the blunt force, that would be a linear line across that person.
It could be depending on the position of the body, the position of the suitcase, and the position or how the object came in contact.
What is a linear injury mean?
So with linear injury is if you think, linear, it's more like a line.
Now, if you took the
I want to hear them
barrel
talk
of the
about the
bat, very
baseball
end of the
bat.
bat,
I'm excited
and you
to hear this.
poked into the suitcase with the barrel of that bat, would those spots there in this exhibit, is that consistent?
That's compatible with that. Yes,
Excuse me?
that's compatible.
And then here's a close-up. This is picture number 15. Again, a close-up, same question. Would that be consistent with poking the suitcase, if he's in the suitcase at the time, thrusting the barrel of that bat, the crown of that bat, would potentially let those type in?
Yes, it's compatible with that.
Now, I want to draw your attention to the cardiovascular system. Do you have your report?
I do.
Okay. You describe the proximal third of the left anterior descending coronary artery having greater than a 75% narrowing of the lumen due to its centrically placed firm yellow-white fibrolipid atherosclerotic plaque.
Yes.
And is that pretty much verbatim with what you said in the report?
Yes.
And that terminology is synonymous with a single vessel high-grade atherosclerotic coronary artery disease.
Yes.
And in that location, it's kind of a classic location for what people refer to as the widowmaker.
Yes.
Because of the location in that vessel that supplies most of the circulation to the left ventricle.
Yes.
If you had a spasm in that artery, that could nearly totally obstruct the lumen and cause a fatal heart attack, could it not?
It could cause a dysrhythmia. Yes.
I'm sorry?
A dysrhythmia or an abnormal beating of the heart.
But that could kill him.
It could.
The lumen is the inside space of the tubular structure.
Yes.
And so that was blocked, over 75%.
It was, but there was no evidence of myocardial scarring. So when the vessels become blocked, you prevent blood from getting to the muscle of the heart. So there was no evidence that there was any scarring. There was no evidence that there was anything that happened acutely. When that happens, we can see changes in the actual muscle of the heart. So there were no changes suggestive of that.
Let me ask you something. If he were to get out of the suitcase on his own and he would have passed out or fell asleep on the couch, and she would have woken up the next day about that time and came down, and he was dead on the couch, and you did this autopsy, would it be fair to say that in your ruling on cause of death, that single vessel coronary artery oscillosclerosis?
Pursue your passion for working with animals and
Hold on just a minute. That's a pretty cat.
Cause of death?
It could be, but any sort of injury overrides natural disease if the injury is significant, right? So you don't have to be a perfectly healthy person to have trauma and die. So it's very common that we see people that have injuries for whatever reason, but also have a lot of natural disease. But we look at it as the injuries override the natural disease, because especially atherosclerotic disease, that's considered long-term, right? So that's been going on for years and years. People walk around with that all the time. So what's different is that we have trauma, and so that overrides natural disease. And sometimes natural disease can contribute, but again, it depends on the individual. It depends on the circumstances.
So absent the positional asphyxia or the environmental asphyxia, and he was dead, and you did the autopsy, it would be fair to say that you would determine this was a natural death from an isolated coronary heart disease, would you not?
It would depend on the circumstances. And I can't speculate on this case because I know what I know about it.
If you had nothing else, the widowmaker would have caused his death, or you would have to have assumed, having nothing else, that would have caused his death.
I most likely would have given him cardiovascular disease.
Now, this ethanol metabolism that we talked about earlier, and there's a question about you believing he was in the elimination phase, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Is it fair to say that George Torres, the decedent, was in the elimination phase since the blood ethanol was below the vitreous value?
Yes.
Yeah, it's speculation.
Given the vitreous value was a 213, is it justified in saying the decedent's blood ethanol level was at least a 0.213 prior to starting the elimination phase?
Yes.
And now you know that the normal elimination rate is, I believe, a 0.015% per hour?
Yes.
Is that standard?
It's an estimate.
And so we have a difference of a 0.138 to the 213. So roughly 5 hours of elimination. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
So in other words, you would agree there's a short interval where the vitreous and the blood are identical.
Yes.
And then the blood drops beneath the vitreous value as ethanol is metabolized in the blood.
Yes.
So is it fair to say, given the significant difference in the blood and the vitreous ethanol values, that the true vitreous and blood ethanol level had to be much higher than what is recorded in your report at the time that he passed?
At the time that he passed? No, this is reflective of the time that he passed.
Say again?
This is reflective, the 0.139, that's reflective of the time that passed. There's not, metabolism after death of the alcohol.
All right, well, let me, what I'm saying is he could have been prior to that time of passing, he could have, his blood alcohol level would have been much higher.
It was at least at the same level as the
At least the two.
Yes.
At least the 213.
Yes.
It could have been much higher.
It could have been, yes.
Judge, if I can approach.
Right.
This is defense composite exhibit for identification. Jay?
Has the state seen it?
Yes.
We stipulate J into evidence.
Was pre-marked as defense J, will be received into evidence without objection as defense 1.
Judge, can I publish these?
You may.
All right, what is it?
Ma'am, there's 5 photographs. I'm just in front of the author. The first one's number 5. What is this depict?
So that's the left hand. So you're looking at the outer surface of the hand, the knuckles, the 3 of the fingers.
That bruise there on his top of his left hand?
Yes.
Right, and the same for picture number 4.
So that's the same, just a little bit further away and without a scale.
Here is picture number 3.
So now you're looking at the thumb and the index finger?
And then shows some bruising on the hand.
Yes.
And here's picture number 2.
So what you're seeing here is, from the scene, our investigators put brown bags over the decedent's hands, and that's, we collect evidence at the time of the autopsy. So at the scene, brown bags are put on the hands to preserve any evidence. And so that's why you're seeing this, because this is a picture that we take. We cut the bag open and we take a picture to show exactly what the hands look like.
You agree there's bruising here on
Yes,
the hand,
there.
and also up around the knuckle area?
Yes.
The fingers, and also on the section here?
Yes.
And then here's the last picture, number 5, which again is the left hand.
Yes.
Showing the bruising on the top of the hand as well as the knuckle area.
Yes.
Thank you, Doctor.
Any redirect examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
You were asked several questions on cross-examination about the alcohol level in this case. And I believe there was a term, metabolic phase or elimination phase. Could you just explain for us what that is?
Sure. So in the toxicology testing, there's 2 different levels that I ordered for levels of alcohol. One is they look in the blood to see the level of alcohol. The other is in what's called vitreous fluid or eye fluid. And we look at both areas because that can give us an idea of whether somebody is metabolizing through the alcohol or whether it's still rising. It just gives us an idea sometimes of how close to death they were when the ingestion of alcohol happened. But basically, the level in the eye fluid trails behind what we see in the blood. There will be a small point in time, as we discussed earlier, that they will be almost the same. But you can just think of it as the blood alcohol goes up, and then a brief period of time later, the alcohol in the eye fluid will start to show. So again, it's just to give us an idea of whether somebody is metabolizing or whether they're still, the level is still rising, or if they're still, intaking alcohol.
So the result in this case was indicative that George Torres's level was coming down.
Yes.
And I think some of the math was a little bit difficult to follow on the fly. But with that rate of dissipation,
our new Bahama Mama bowl at Tropical Smoothie Cafe is absolutely dreamy. You're on tropic time now.
Skip the video while my family suffers every second. They need your support.
would it be fair to say that he would have been in that suitcase for approximately 5 hours? Because he couldn't be drinking whilst in the suitcase, that we're seeing this rate decrease between these 2 levels.
Well, you have to be careful how you interpret it, because the numbers that I have from toxicology testing, that's from one point in time. I mean, we're collecting those specimens at the time of the autopsy. So that's only one point in time. It's possible, but I can't say for certain. All I can tell you is that at some point in time, his blood alcohol was at least the higher level that we saw in the vitreous fluid. So if, in the calculation of the 5 hours, that's an estimate, because again, everyone's a little bit different.
Right.
But I think it's reasonable to say 5 hours. Yes, that's within reason.
I just wanted to see her cross.
Obviously.
And then we're going to look at the Black Swan ballerina, and then that won't take long. And then that'll have to be it for me today. So we're almost done with this witness.
A pretty obvious point, but we don't continue to metabolize alcohol after death.
Correct.
You were asked about studies or tests being performed on the suitcase in this case.
Correct.
Would the presence of objects in that suitcase also affect the length of time a person may have survived in that suitcase?
I guess if there were a lot of other objects in there that maybe could, occlude the mouth or nose, or maybe if that means that there's more stuff in the suitcase, there's less room for the person. So I guess.
Another variable that would also be present would be the opening of that zipper, would it not?
Yes.
if the zipper was further open, potentially more oxygen could be coming into that area. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, there could be more oxygen coming in, but that's always the question is, would it be enough? Because you can still have oxygen there, but it may not be enough. And again, for kind of the factors that I talked about before.
And there would be no way to know exactly how far that zipper was potentially forced open.
Correct.
I have no further questions.
Can this witness be released?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, All right, thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Can the parties approach for a moment?
So now we're going to look at the Black Swan ballerina who had motions entered into a previous trial where she was convicted of manslaughter. And that'll be it for me today. I think that's, no. Hold on. I want to try to do a quick recap. This will probably give us a quick recap real quick, and then we'll watch the motions that were filed yesterday. I don't know.
Back now with the latest on a murder case that's being called the Black Swan trial. A former ballerina accused of shooting and killing her estranged husband, but she is claiming it was self-defense. NBC's Kathy Park has the details.
Then you identified yourself.
Tonight, a murder case being dubbed the Black Swan trial, now underway in Florida.
Yes.
32-year-old
so.
former
I'm
ballerina
bored.
Ashley Benefield
There's
is
more
accused of
people
shooting
watching.
and killing her estranged husband nearly 4 years ago. Police say Ashley ran to a neighbor's house in September 2020, claiming she shot her husband, 59-year-old Doug Benefield, after he attacked her. In court, prosecutors playing a 911 call placed by the neighbor the day of the shooting.
Manatee County 911, what is the address of your emergency?
Okay.
1 moment.
Calm down, honey. Calm down.
That neighbor also taking the stand Tuesday.
As soon as I opened the door, before I could say anything, she said, he attacked me.
And is that all she said?
At that point, I said, who? He said, Doug. He attacked me, and I shot him.
But after a 5-week investigation, a sheriff's office report found bullet entry wounds on Doug, indicating he was shot while facing away from his wife, and found no evidence of self-defense. The Benefields met at a political event in 2016.
I didn't
She
know
was
much
24.
about it.
He was 54 at the time. They married just 13 days after meeting, according to attorneys for the state, and later formed a short-lived ballet company. At the time of the shooting, the couple was in the middle of a custody battle over their 2-year-old daughter.
This was a custody battle that this mother was going to win at all costs. And the cost was the life of Doug Benefield. And that is murder.
In the weeks and months leading up to the shooting, Ashley claimed Doug was abusing her, though not physically.
Ashley's result and resource to deadly force was absolutely justified under the circumstances.
In a hearing before the shooting, Doug was granted access to their child and said Ashley was lying about these allegations of abuse. A law enforcement report said it appears that Ashley had exhausted all legal means of keeping the child away from Douglas before the shooting. Last year, Ashley's attorney tried to argue the shooting was a stand your ground case, but the court ruled against it.
The judge who dismissed that motion, he felt that a reasonable person would not be that scared in that moment to justify using a deadly weapon. But that does not mean that a jury will not agree with her.
Ashley is out on bond, but facing a minimum mandatory sentence of 25 years in prison if found guilty. We reached out to Ashley's attorney, but have not heard back. Ashley's story drawing support from some in her community who are using the hashtag #WeStandWithAshley on social media. Among those marching outside the courthouse, Ashley's young daughter, whose future also hangs in the balance. Kathy Park, NBC News.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated
Okay.
about breaking news and
She was convicted of manslaughter. I'm not sure if she is in jail right now, but there was an update yesterday on her case. So let me pull that. Where is what I want? I think this one. Hold on just a minute. Do. Hold on just a minute. It happened yesterday. There it is right there. All right, so her lawyer's filing a motion. I'm going to speed it up a little bit and we can see what motion they're trying to file and what they're saying. So something happened in the first case where some evidence wasn't admitted and he's trying to get this evidence re-entered.
See how I use an ad blocker during my
Oh, you're good. Yeah, it's the black swan and the white swan ballerina reference because they're saying basically that she's psycho.
I think the case law requires the court to grant the motion.
Okay. I'm going to skip it to where her lawyer is talking and trying to get this
Would you be
motion
interested
filed.
in
I
collecting
hate when they do
5-figure
that.
paychecks for a few
I literally saw 3 seconds of the video and now we're just right back in a commercial. Let me skip it to where her lawyer comes up and we'll speed it up a little bit because I do have to go.
Whatever you want to reserve for rebuttal, you certainly can reserve that.
It's hard to hear. Like, I can't hear it at all.
Which one? Which hearing?
Well, of course, we can't hear it now.
And it was.
I did the initial factual representation, or then allowed Mr. Cannell with a significant other about their child or the custody of their child. She did not respond. At the juror.
Why can't we hear it?
If they're coming in late, I'm not going to stop the proceedings. Okay. Go ahead, sir.
I'll take 15 seconds.
Yes, sir.
Her explanation at the inquiry that was made by the court as to the first question, you ever been a victim of a crime, was she took the position it was dismissed, so she didn't think it was applicable and did not equate.
Let me see if we can hear him any better.
Despite the fact that Mr. Ballinger was handcuffed.
15 was her failure to acknowledge that she had been involved in domestic violence court. At the subsequent hearing, she acknowledged she was the petitioner in a domestic violence petition, and the court has copies of that petition. At the top of the petition, it says petition for protection against domestic violence. So it makes no logical sense. She wouldn't understand that. She was also, more importantly, the respondent in 2 domestic violence injunctions, also entitled on top petition for protection against domestic violence.
So they're talking about her positions for protection against domestic violence.
The first one was her ex-husband and her son, their son, and then the second was on behalf of the son. In the second one, the ex-husband specifically asked for custody and was awarded temporary custody of the minor child. So her answer is that she did not know that she was involved in domestic violence courts are disingenuous and misled the defense in its decision-making process. Most importantly, the omissions are material, and there's a 3-part test under De La Rosa. 1,
Okay, Bellis, thank you.
one of the elements is, did the juror conceal information? I think that's undisputed at this point. 2, is the information relevant and material to jury service in this case? And what the De La Rosa case says is, if a potential juror is similarly situated to the opposing party, then it makes reasonable sense that the other party will want to exclude that person for cause or effrontery. Here, by being the respondent and allegedly committing acts of domestic violence in a family situation, accused of threats and misconduct, it is similar to the allegations that Ms. Benefield made against Douglas Benefield. So those particular, the fact that she was a respondent in those 2 cases makes her similarly situated to Douglas Benefield and makes it clear that had that information been properly disclosed, Mr. Taylor and Ms. Benefield would have been suspicious of her, believed she may have been biased, and would have exercised a cause or a peremptory challenge.
So they're saying that evidence wasn't, the domestic violence evidence wasn't admitted, and had it been admitted, there would have been suspicions towards her, I'm assuming.
The third factor was the failure to disclose the information attributable to the complaining party's lack of diligence. And those cases discuss the sufficiency of the questions asked by the lawyers. And as Mr. Taylor, I think, adequately indicated, the questions in this case could not be any more clear. Have you been a victim of a crime? Were you involved in domestic violence cases, and have you been involved in a dispute about child custody with a significant other? There's nothing about those questions that are unclear. And if you look at the Roberts case, got it?
He's referencing cases.
In that case, they just asked about litigation, and the lawyer, the potential juror, apparently explanation was that they didn't specifically say domestic assault or injunction, but they just said litigation was enough. Here we were more specific. It was domestic violence, course, and custody. In the Taylor case, Taylor versus Magana.
Yes, sir.
Under head note 11 of the opinion, they found that the questions were satisfied a due diligence inquiry because they were specific, unambiguous, and not cluttered with sophisticated or confusing legalese. Again, the questions here could not be more clear. It's our position that we've established the three-part test on the De La Rosa. That shifts the burden to the state to show that any error was harmless. Under the facts of this case, they cannot meet that burden. And it's our position that the court is required by De La Rosa, Roberts, and the Fegan case to grant the motion.
Thank you, sir.
State, you're on the clock.
I just want to respond briefly to what counsel said about the Roberts case. If Your Honor reads the Roberts case, they did ask initially in the questionnaire about litigation, but one thing that was very important to the court was that Roberts
I think they're
attorney
trying to file a
during
motion
the
for a
order
new case.
clearly clarified this inquiry, and he said, has there been any kind of lawsuit, divorce, collection of a debt, breach of contract, assault and battery, auto accident, defective product, medical negligence, divorce, domestic assault? And that's pretty clear. So that's why the Roberts case said it was clear in the Roberts case. It wasn't because of the questionnaire that said, have you ever been involved in a lawsuit? And if Your Honor reads this case, I think you'll see that the court would have a very different opinion if it had just been the questionnaire itself. So I do agree with the De La Rosa three elements that the defense has to prove. I do not agree that they have met those burdens. These facts are not undisputed whatsoever. I think the only one that could be termed as undisputed is the first thing that the defense mentioned, that was the questionnaire for juror 15 marked no when it said, have you ever been a victim of a crime? She testified that she answered no because she misunderstood. However, I do agree that that does not make a difference when you're looking at the case law. But nonetheless, she did raise her paddle, Judge, later on when the defense asked, has anyone experienced an abusive male? She raised her paddle. She testified that she raised her paddle, or it's in her letter that she gave to the court. Also, in Mr. O'Keefe's affidavit, Exhibit A, where it says experience abusive male, and it has the number 15 written down. She raised her paddle. So even if she said on her questionnaire she was not a victim of a crime, she did raise her paddle when she said, I've experienced an abusive male. So I don't think that it's clear that this was not rectified and remedied with that question. But however, even if the court believes that it was not rectified, the defense never followed up with any of these questions when they asked, has anyone ever experienced an abusive male? The defense never asked juror 15 any questions about this abusive male, never exercised due diligence, which is the third prong of the De La Rosa test.
They sure do.
And also, Judge, and maybe most importantly, is that this issue, being a victim of a crime, is not material or relevant to the jury service of juror 15. That even if she withheld this info, that she was the victim, that's all we're talking about here, the victim of domestic violence, wouldn't that make her more sympathetic to Ashley Benefield, who is claiming she was the victim of domestic violence? So to insinuate the opposite, I think, would be disingenuous. I think it would align her more with the defendant.
I agree.
Doug Benefield. And perhaps most importantly is this issue could not have been that material because another juror, according to Mr. O'Keefe's affidavit, raised their paddle when they were asked, have you ever experienced an abusive male? Number 35 raised her paddle, and she was seated on the jury. She was never struck, and she was never asked any questions about the abusive male. So it's hard for the defense to try and say that this is material when they did not treat juror 35 any differently than they did juror 15. So the state's argument is that they have not met their burden, the De La Rosa factors on the first issue. The second issue is, have you ever been involved in domestic violence courts? First of all,
So
Judge,
this
the
is
term
a motion.
violence courts is very vague.
that they're filing. They're trying, I'm assuming, to get a new trial in the yeah, I'm concerned about hearing it too. I'm probably about to end it, but it's a motion to try to get a new trial in the Black Swan murder case. Here, we'll stop this because it's hard to hear it, and I'll play that quick recap of the what trial this is real quick, and then I'll go for the day so that you can see it. Anders, I hate that it doesn't. I've got to set it up where it shows me what I've watched. Hold on just a minute. We just pulled up a real quick recap from the NBC News. That was like 3 minutes. Right here. So this is the trial that this was, Anders. This is from NBC News.
Back now with the latest on a murder case that's being called
the Black Swan is part of a ballet. There's a white swan and a black swan, and the black swan is supposedly like Psycho.
Black Swan trial. A former ballerina accused of shooting and killing her estranged husband, but she is claiming it was self-defense. NBC's Kathy Park has the details.
Then you identified yourself.
Tonight, a murder case being dubbed the Black Swan trial, now underway in Florida.
Yes.
32-year-old former ballerina Ashley Benefield is accused of shooting and killing her estranged husband nearly 4 years ago. Police say Ashley ran to a neighbor's house in September 2020, claiming she shot her husband, 59-year-old Doug Benefield, after he attacked her. In court, prosecutors playing a 911 call placed by the neighbor the day of the shooting.
Manatee County 911, what is the address of your emergency?
Okay.
1 moment.
Calm down, honey. Calm down.
That neighbor also taking the stand Tuesday.
As soon as I opened the door, before I could say anything, she said, he attacked me.
And is that all she said?
At that point, I said, who? He said, Doug. He attacked me, and I shot him.
But after a 5-week investigation, a sheriff's office report found bullet entry wounds on Doug, indicating he was shot while facing away from his wife, and found no evidence of self-defense. The Benefields met at a political event in 2016. She was 24. He was 54 at the time. They married just 13 days after meeting, according to attorneys for the state, and later formed a short-lived ballet company. At the time of the shooting, the couple was in the middle of a custody battle over their 2-year-old daughter.
This was a custody battle that this mother was going to win at all costs. And the cost was the life of Doug Benefield. And that is murder.
In the weeks and months leading up to the shooting, Ashley claimed Doug was abusing her, though not physically.
Ashley's result and resource to deadly force was absolutely justified under the circumstances.
In a hearing before the shooting, Doug was granted access to their child and said Ashley was lying about these allegations of abuse. A law enforcement report said it appears that Ashley had exhausted all legal means of keeping the child away from Douglas before the shooting. Last year, Ashley's attorney tried to argue the shooting was a stand your ground case, but the court ruled against it.
The judge who dismissed that motion, he felt that a reasonable person would not be that scared in that moment to justify using a deadly weapon. But that does not mean that a jury will not agree with her.
Ashley is out on bond, but facing a minimum mandatory sentence of 25 years in prison if found guilty. We reached out to Ashley's attorney, but have not heard back. Ashley's story drawing support from some in her community who are using the hashtag #WeStandWithAshley on social media. Among those marching outside the courthouse, Ashley's young daughter, whose future also hangs in the balance. Kathy Park, NBC News.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news.
So that was the Black Swan murder trial. And then yesterday they entered motions to get her new trial. I know she was convicted of manslaughter. That's about all I know about that one. But I figured I'd throw it in here because it was on my on the list of things from yesterday. Yeah, no doubt. That was a 20-year age gap. Like, wow. But that's gonna have to be it for me today. I know the little girl, I was thinking the same thing, like, why has her mama got her right there in the middle of it too, or the family? But I mean, I don't know. That's gonna have to be it for me today. I want to thank all my lovely speculating family members for being here with me this Tuesday morning. And I appreciate y'all spending your Tuesday morning with me, and I will see y'all tomorrow. I think there's supposed to be some spicy stuff going on in the Leilani Simon trial that we'll check out. And of course, Sarah Boone's going to testify in her trial. So we'll look at that tomorrow too. Thank you, Jenny, Abellis, Eek, Anders, Trixie, everybody that was here, Keister Bunny, everybody. Thank you for being here. I love spending time with my lovely family members in the morning. I hope y'all have the best day you've ever had in your whole entire life. And I will see y'all all back here in the morning. Have a good day.
Listen up, I gotta tell you, there is something you should